The building just totally collapsed. Everyone's freaking out and screaming for an ambulance, but one guy's already on the phone calling for help. This guy is totally convinced his life is finally over. A massive run of bad luck brought him to this point. He feels like even if he gets a second chance, nothing will ever change. The maid tells Mrs. Lyra that her son is here, and as she lies in bed, she's just so happy they finally get to meet her sweet boy, Zendal. Our hero just got a second chance at life, but get this, he's been reborn as a tiny baby. The guy is on his knees, totally confused about how he's still alive, when suddenly someone sneaks up right behind him. The stranger thanked him for the help and revealed he was actually a guide between life and death, a soul who totally crushed it in his past life despite having a super rough childhood. So in the end, he gets totally flattened by a massive iron beam. But don't even worry, because he's waking up in a brand new body. He's even getting first off, he gets to keep all his memories, and he'll already speak the language in this new world. Plus, they're even giving him a special soul protection as a bonus. But the best thing they gave him wasn't just a gift. It was actually super useful, and it's the exact skill that gets measured by. This custom eye was built just for him and lets him scan everything he sees. It's a total cheat code because absolutely nothing can stay hidden from him anymore. The mysterious stranger tells him Suddenly, the world lottery popped up right behind him. Our hero couldn't believe how much weirder things were getting. He had so many questions, but he knew he just had to deal. Suddenly, a tiny little ball just tumbled right out of the car. The guide called her golden and promised this world would bring him luck, but he had no clue what that meant and zero time to ask any questions. Just like that, the guy snaps his fingers and our hero drops into a giant tunnel. The guide yells for him to have an awesome new life. The last thing he sees is that now he's reborn as a tiny baby in his mom Lyra's arms, and she's shocked by how hard he's staring, wondering if he actually recognizes her. Mr. Gilbert reaches out and calls the kid beautiful, but the maid tells him to stop being a jerk like he was this morning so he doesn't scare the child, and he just says our hero is dying to know what's going on, but he can't even move or speak, and everyone's wearing weird outfits that look nothing like home. The guide explains that this world is totally different and full of crazy powers, so our hero remembers his evaluation eye and decides to see what it can actually do. He was trying to figure out how to use it and realized he needed a spell, but since he couldn't speak, he just focused his mind on the evaluation eye instead. Suddenly, a ton of screens just popped up right in front of the baby. He's finally got it all figured out, and with a game-like screen showing him everything he needs, he knows those stat points are going to be super important even if he notices his luck is at 200, but he has no clue if that's actually good since he was a total loser in his past life. And with his other stats they were just a couple of kids, a girl named Mariana and a boy named Theobald. The maid tells the kids to pipe down since Mr. Zendalt is napping, but Mariana is super hyped to finally see him after waiting forever. So Theo promises they'll be careful and their mom lets them head upstairs. She gushed about how he was so adorable she fell for him all over again. Then he noticed the kid had his mom's silver hair and purple eyes, but Zenbelt finally told them. Out of nowhere, he just snatched Theo's hand, making him turn bright red and totally freeze up, while Mariana started screaming that she wanted to turn too, and the maid basically hissed at them to pipe down. The girl announced her sister was taking over his care from now on, and Theo was totally down with the plan, especially since Zeke was basically acting like a human doll that Mariana kept placing right next to her. Our hero was shocked by their insane energy and knew they'd try to take him out again and again, all 28 of them. Mariana said sorry for being so loud and promised her brother that once he's big, they'll go on family walks and make a ton of awesome memories together. Then she told Zeke she loved him and thanked him for just being born. Lyron saw the kids were finally vibing, Gilbert totally agreed, and Zeke felt like he hit the jackpot with his new family. He's honestly just hyped to finally be here. She says the big awakening is happening tomorrow and thinks he's only there because of Willie, but our hero has absolutely no clue what's going on. Gilbert was totally freaking out, and while Lyra agreed, she mentioned that Willie was actually doing just fine. Mariana then asked if Uncle Willibald was around since she really wanted to see him, but Willibald is a total pro and the most reliable knight on the team. He literally finishes one mission and jumps straight into the next without even taking a break. On top of that, he Zeke gave his mom a confused look, so she explained that Gert was his brother away at the academy where every noble has to pass an awakening ritual to learn magic, or else they're stuck training. Theo's terrified they'll find a top-tier power on Zeke, since that's exactly why Gert was snatched away at age 5 and never even got to go home, and he's not about to let those snitching evaluators steal Zeke away too. Gilbert patted his son's head and called him a total prodigy, saying he was sorry for failing him before but promising he wouldn't mess up this time, so he told her to keep. Our MC realizes that if you're born with crazy talent, the Academy snatches you up immediately, and he's basically a max-level prodigy. If he doesn't, that night, Zeke's just lying in bed with a maid nearby, trying to figure out how to keep his secret stats hidden from everyone. He's got to ditch them by tomorrow, but he's totally stuck on how to do it. He's definitely not going to that academy because they just treat him like a science experiment. Out of nowhere, a guy pops up and asks Zeke if he called for him, which totally freaks Zeke out. He asked who the heck he was, and the guy just said he showed up because the kid hit the help button. He clearly hasn't mastered his evaluation eye yet, even though it lets you see everyone's secret skills instantly, so the monster tells him he better hide his stats before someone notices. He's also got a skill to hide his stats. It's a super handy power, but he hasn't really mastered it yet. Now, our guy is just standing there with no clue. The assistant tells him to start training his stats and skills, but since that feature doesn't unlock until tomorrow, he's lucky he's already got 1,000 protection points from his reincarnation blessing. He uses his points to grab some skills like hiding his stats, and the hero is totally down for it. But the assistant warns him that 1,000 points is a massive deal and he might really need them. Our hero realized he was totally backed into a corner. He's not letting anything happen to his family because they're the only thing that matters to him. The creature actually spoke back, letting him know he totally got it. Everyone in the house welcomed Mr. Willibald with open arms as he told them he was finally back home. Gilbert noticed his brother was still a total superstar. They walk into the room where Lyra and Zenbelt are waiting, and Willie tells them it's been way too long since they last saw each other. She told him she was just happy he was doing well, but when he mentioned how his daughter-in-law was still a total beauty, Gilbert snapped his name in a rage while Willie just told him to chill out and stop being so jealous over a simple hello. Lyra said she was super happy, so Willie congratulated her on the new baby and told her there was no way he'd miss out on visiting. He scooped the kid up and told Zinbald he was stoked to finally meet him, introducing himself as Uncle Willibald. He pointed out how much the little guy looked like his mom, calling him Super T. The guy took a close look at the kid, told him not to be scared because it wouldn't hurt, and then he activated his evaluation eye. Out of nowhere, these floating windows with all his stats just popped up. Zeke just stood there, waiting to hear what his punishment was going to be. Gilbert asks what kind of magic the kid has, checking for stuff like fire, wind, or light, but Willie and the dad both confirm he doesn't have any of those high-level powers. Zeke was stoked that everything went perfectly, so after checking out the loot, he left some behind but made sure to hide the high-level gear just for show. Willie noticed the kid looked exactly like his daughter-in-law, and the little girl was totally glowing. Gilbert hugged his wife and said God finally answered their prayers, and while she agreed, Willie finished his check and said the magic was totally stable, making Seedbelt realize he could finally relax because this life was way better than his old one. Out of nowhere, everything around the baby started glowing like crazy, and Gilbert turned to his brother to ask what was going on. He just told them their son was one lucky kid. Father Zeke's face went totally pale with pure horror. The hero wondered if the guy had finally noticed something was off. Willie's already caught a glimpse of those wings, and they look straight up divine. This guy is seriously lucky, like he was handpicked by the gods for something special. The baby's uncle yelled that this was already a huge problem, and they needed to report it fast because the Ministry of Magic wasn't just going to let this slide. Zeke realizes he totally blew the plan, but after trying this hard, there's no way he's backing down now. Willibald tells his brother that this kid is built different, with insane magic that's already way stronger than his own was at birth. Zeke realized this kid might actually be high level, and with his luck being totally trash, he started wondering if it was finally game over. Willie says the boss handed them a special kid, and legend has it these rare people can actually become literal gods. The guy tells him he really needs to head to the academy. Gilbert isn't having it and says no way. Zeke figures he just doesn't want to leave his friends behind. Suddenly, she's totally glowing, calling her baby a literal gift from God, while her husband just stares in total shock as she promises her son is going to grow up to be an absolute beast. She grabbed her husband's hand, gave him a sweet smile, and told him to keep Zeke safe, leaving the guy looking totally shocked. But then he got totally serious and swore he'd protect their little Zikbolt. He pointed out that the only real issue was announcing the kid's power, and Willie totally agreed since they had to keep his massive magic a secret. They had to cook up a cover story for his awakening and powers. So when Gilbert asked if he could hide his mana, his brother told him it's not that simple and he should just... This plan is actually genius for keeping him safe from the government. And since everyone trusts him, Gilbert's sure it'll work because they'll just lie and say the baby has no powers, so... The guys finally figured out a way to fix everything. And for the first time ever, our hero actually felt like people needed him, which totally caught him off guard. Lyra says Zeke is staying at her place, and Willie backs her up, declaring it's a secret only the 5 of them will ever know. Gilbert was totally lost on why they needed 5 people when only 3 were in the room. But then Willibald turned to the door and called someone over. Mariana and Theobald suddenly showed up at the door, and Gilbert was totally blown away that they'd been there the entire time. Willie asks how long they've been listening and tells them it's seriously uncool to spy on grown-up talk. Mariana claims she forced Theo to spy with her, but Theo insisted it was actually her idea, making Willie realize they were just covering for each other because they were so worried about Zeke. Mariana apologized and said she was just terrified of Zeke being taken, but Mom told her that being worried is no excuse to act like that. She's honestly just stoked they care about their brother this much, especially since Dad and Willie are ready to fight anyone who messes with him, leaving the siblings super happy. Zeke felt so lucky to have a family like this, but Willie jumped in and warned the girls to keep their mouths shut because nobody could ever find out what just happened. If they don't listen, they're in for a world of hurt, and the look on his face said he wasn't playing games. The girls were absolutely terrified as they nodded along, but the hero had no clue why this guy was even scary. Willie told his brother his kids always keep their word, and their dad backed him up 100%. He crouched down and told his kids he was super proud of them. Then the uncle told the whole crowd exactly what the MC could do. That's the only reason the government didn't come. Fast forward a few months, and Zeke, who was a total 0 in his past life, is finally living his best life. And even the creature thinks he's right. He said the hero was lucky to keep his past life memories so he could stay home. But his balance was a total disaster at -444, and Zeke suspected the whole thing was rigged. After dying in a freak accident, he was reborn as a total legend in another world. But now he's stuck between life and death and is completely lost. There was no mistake. He was literally chosen by God. Zeke realized this creature wasn't saying anything new at all. He sarcastically thanked the thing for the info he already had. It turns, the monster agrees. The kid tells him to stop screaming out of nowhere, and when he asks about their talk from yesterday, the assistant stays totally silent, making the guy realize he's not getting any info out of him. The monster asked what that massive pile of books was, and the hero just told him they were basic spell books for beginners. The maid was blown away that such a little kid wanted to learn magic, so she gave him some starter books, and he totally crushed it by understanding every single word. Now he just needs to figure out how to actually use magic, especially since he picked up so many crazy secrets last time. There are 12 total magic types, ranging from high-tier powers like flame, thunder, and light to basic elements like fire, wind, and water, and you've gotta... When you mix them together, they unlock totally different powers, making this magic world feel just like a straight-up fairy tale. If your attributes don't line up, you get 0 magic. But if they're a perfect match, the power finally kicks in, and while every mage gets their own unique ability, this thing was built to totally wreck the darkness, so you've got to get ready at night under the moon, just like how fireflies used to guide them in their past lives. Zeke finally gets the room to light up. He remembers how he used to think this was just straight-up magic in his old life. Turns out, his past life knowledge is actually a huge help. Our hero is so hyped he's diving back into his magic books, ready to push his energy to the limit and grab a score that shines like the sun. That magic was insanely bright, blasting right through the whole building, and even though he pulled it off, he totally blinded himself and really needs to watch it next time. He's dying to find out more, but then Gilbert suddenly walks in asking why the light is still on. He spotted Zeke and immediately asked what a kid was even doing there. The maid asks Lear how she's doing, and Lear says she's feeling better, but then she looks at a photo and admits she really misses Gert. Gilbert slams the door open and tells his wife that Zikbolt is finally standing on his own 2 feet, and he's absolutely hyped about it. The maid calls out Mr. Gilbert for being a jerk, but he totally ignores her to show Lyra that their son is finally standing, and she thinks it's absolutely amazing. Zeke was totally freaking out, but he used his magic and it actually worked. Then his dad told him he was finally standing on his own 2 feet, which is pretty much normal for anyone else. Gilbert can tell Zeke is almost ready to handle things on his own, but the hero begs him to stop because he's still way too young for that. He didn't want to upset his mom, so with no other choice, he walked straight over to the bed where she was sitting. Our hero realized he finally had to start moving, but man, it was a total struggle. His body felt all weird and out of whack, but his mom was just hyped to see her little guy. Gilbert scooped the kid up, totally blown away by what he saw. Zeke had finally figured out how to walk on his own. This kid was seriously on another level. But inside Zeke, suddenly, Hans the butler pops up and asks Mr. Gilbert why he's slacking off instead of doing his job. Hans orders him back to the office, and even though the guy says his kid just started walking, Hans forces him to come in until the dad finally gives up. Actually, the original says Hans was indignant that the boss had at least finished the job and then they left. This phrasing is a bit weird in English. It likely means Hans was mad because the boss. Lyra asks Anna to grab a book for Zeke, and she's totally down, even mentioning she just found some cool new ones for him, while Zeke is stuck wishing he could just grow up. His mom saw he was totally wiped out and told him to get some sleep, so he headed straight to bed. Lyra pats her son's head and tells him he's almost won, saying he'll grow up to be a real man soon, and she's just so happy to have him by her side. She's totally hyped about this, but our hero can tell his mom is acting super weird today. Lyra wants her son to live a life of total freedom away from the government's control, and even though she knows he's got a tough road ahead, she's 100% sure he'll handle it because he's her special boy who's going to be way stronger and braver than everyone else. His mom started sobbing and promised she'd always have his back, saying she wanted all his dreams to come true, but Zeke had no clue why she was even crying. She pulled her son into a tight hug and begged him to just be happy, apologizing over and over until her voice finally cracked. Lyra's creature just got taken out, and when Anna sees it, she drops her book in total shock and screams her mistress's name. She rushed over to the bed and begged the lady to wake up. This student is just chilling at his academy table when a guy bursts in with a letter from his dad, refusing to stay quiet because the news inside is actually a huge deal. His mom was dead, and the kid just stood there with his face frozen in total shock. Rain poured down at the funeral as Zeke huddled in his dad's arms staring at his mom's coffin, while Gret watched his little brother with tears and total rage. Gilbert's walking down the hall with his brothers, talking about how everything happened way too fast, and the short-haired guy totally agrees, saying even he was caught off guard. Willie points out that funerals are basically the worst day ever and tells his brother to get some rest, but even though his brother says he's cool, Willibald asks if he's even slept normally since his wife passed away. Gilbert didn't say a word, but his face said it all when he told his brothers that his kid's safety was the only thing he cared about. The kids were all stuck in the room with Anna, and Mariana was just sitting there, crying her eyes out. Zeke had no clue his mom was actually sick, and losing her right after he was born was a total tragedy since she was so kind and beautiful. But if he had just used his judging eye, he broke down in tears, wondering why he was so completely useless. Theo suddenly jumps up and bolts, and when Alberto asks what's up, she explains that Gert is coming and tells him to just go see his mom since he's a total mama. Gert marched down the hallway while the maid scrambled just to keep up with him. Theo was hyped to see her brother again, but he immediately cut her off and said they didn't have time for small talk. He stormed into the room and aimed his weapon at his little brother, totally convinced that Zeke was the one behind all this mess. Anna's holding Zeke right now, and the hero is totally lost about what's happening to his own brother. He had no idea where all that rage was coming from, but Gert just started blasting him with thunderbolts. Anna shielded Zeke with her own body, and Mariana was totally blown away by what was happening. Uncle lunged to stop Herb while Mariana screamed for backup, and Theo shouted that they needed healing magic plus Uncle and Dad there right now. Gert asks his uncle why he's getting in the way when Siegwelt is the one who killed his mom. But his uncle reveals the dark truth that she actually got sick after giving birth, making Gert the real cause of her death while Zeke is totally innocent. Gert wasn't buying a word Alberto said and just kept raining down arrows on him. Willie jumped in to break things up, telling Alberto to quit it and ordering Gert to stay right there by the glass wall. Willie saw his nephew's solid reaction just as Gilbert burst into the room asking what was going on. Willibald patched up Anna and Zeke, and he was honestly so relieved to see the kid was totally okay. He gave Mariana and Theo some serious props, and when Gilbert asked how Anna and Zeke were doing, His brother told him they were totally fine with just some tiny scratches. Willibald knew they had to lock Gert away before he actually killed Zeke, especially since the poor kid has already been through way too much for his age. Their uncle gave the kids the choice to leave or stay, and Mariana decided she was sticking around. Anna apologized for the mistake, but Willie told her she was way too hurt and needed to rest, even though she only cared about the young master being safe. Gert definitely caught their eye, and you could tell he was about to absolutely lose it. Mariana demanded to know why her brother did it, since Zeke is literally just an innocent kid who hasn't done anything wrong. He asked his sister if she'd totally lost it since she couldn't possibly know, but she just asked if a newborn could ever hurt its own mom and told Gert to just chill out. The kid didn't even care and swore he was going to take Zeke's life right then and there. Mariana was totally desperate, so she begged her dad to keep Zeke safe from Gert. She's down to fight her own brother just to keep Zeke safe, and she tells her dad he better do the same. He wondered if his brother would see how sad this looked, so he asked him for his take. Gert glared at every single one of them, and man, he was straight up fuming. He couldn't stop thinking about how that kid was the golden child from birth while he was always the loner, feeling like a total outsider just like his mom. Siegbelt snatched his mom's love away, so Gert's never gonna forgive him for being a total monster. Zeke finally opens his eyes, and Mariana and Theo immediately tackle him with a hug, telling him they were totally freaking out. Willie checked in on Zeke to see how he was doing, and everything seemed totally normal until Zeke remembered his brother Gert showing up for their mom's funeral with a vibe that was just pure hate. He had this terrifying look in his eyes like he was straight up ready to end him. Theo and Mariana felt super guilty and apologized for being way too slow to keep him safe. Uncle steps up to check on the kid's body. They're officially keeping Gert far away from him now. Zeke realizes he'd be dead meat if Uncle hadn't shown up, right? Willie patted his niece's head and told her to get some sleep since she'd totally drained herself healing her brother. And Theo needed to rest up too. Theo swears Zeke is totally innocent, and Willibald is so thankful the kid saved him, promising to never let this mess happen again so Zeke can finally have a normal, happy childhood. Willie says he's going to give it a shot too, while Zeke feels totally weird just standing there being useless. Uncle told the kids to go get some sleep, but Theo insisted they were staying right there to crash next to Zeke. While the kids were fast asleep, Willibald was deep in thought until his brother suddenly showed up and interrupted him. Gilbert walks into the room, and when Willie asks about Gert, he says the guy is totally shutting him out because he's way too obsessed with Zeke. Uncle says he totally gets it, and that he's lucky his dad was there for him. Gilbert has no clue how to handle him anymore because he never thought he'd end up like this. Willow. Something is seriously wrong with this academy. It's way too suspicious. Gilbert totally agreed. Gert's been acting super weird since he started classes. Maybe they're teaching forbidden stuff in there. The dad decided to end this once and for all, but as he headed for the door, he suddenly collapsed because he was totally out of energy. So Willie told his brother to just get some sleep. He stepped up and said he'd be the one protecting the kids from now on. This guy is absolutely fuming, and he's not stopping until he uncovers every single secret. He finally swallowed his pride and said sorry to his brother. Willibald stands on the roof stressing out because everything is a mess. His brother has become totally weak, and he honestly has no clue what to do next. The guy was super confident and told them he's totally got this handled. They seriously picked the wrong crew to mess with, and they're gonna regret it, because even if things are brutal right now, they're gonna push through and come back way stronger than ever. Theo, Marie, Alberto, brother Gilbert, the father and uncle, and even Zeke have all survived some seriously crazy stuff. Everything's different now because our hero spent all his time grinding to get stronger and smarter, mastering every single magic combo in the book. He was grinding for the top spot just to make his mom proud. There's no doubt about it. Our hero is going to get insanely strong. Fast forward 4 years. Theo's just walking down the hall when someone calls out to him, so he spins around to see what's going on. Little 5-year-old Zikbalt begged his big brother to let him tag along. Zeke asks Theo to let him tag along, and Theo is totally caught off guard by his brother's request. Zeke refuses to back down and reveals he knows Theo is in the Adventurers Guild before heading off to train, leaving his brother totally stunned that he found out. Our main guy says sorry to his brother, but his special eye shows him the truth. Theo is just a weak F-ranker who literally just started adventuring. Zeke begged his brother to let him tag along again, but his bro shut him down because he was still way too young for that kind of stuff. Zeke fired up his magic and told everyone he was already ready to throw down. Theo was totally shocked that a kid like Zeke could use such high-level magic, but Zeke just shrugged and said he'd been putting in work at home. He's obsessed with getting stronger, so he started studying magic, but his level is totally stuck. He flashes back to when he tried using magic with every ounce of power he had, but it was a total bust, leaving him wondering if he was just screwing it up. The assistant calls him out, saying his level is way too low and he's just wasting all that energy instead of turning it into magic. He's still just a newbie, but his eye power is already working, showing him a level icon that only goes up if he crushes monsters. Basically, he's got to fight a ton of enemies if he ever wants to get strong. Theo says it's totally normal because you need real battle experience to level up, and since Zeke hasn't fought enough yet, Theo doesn't get why he's being so impatient. He says he just wants to get stronger, because as long as she's this weak, she won't be able to protect anyone. The kid is feeling totally crushed, so he decides he's got to level up, while Thea watches him and gets emotional remembering the time he begged Gert to take him along. The boy told Sir Hans to get the carriage ready so they could head out together. Zik was super hyped and thanked his brother, but he warned him this was a one-time deal and told him to stay glued to his side. So the hero did exactly what Our heroes are cruising along in a boat. Theo warns them that this forest is totally crawling with monsters. Their big mission is to hunt down some white rabbits. But don't let this in. It's just a practice day, so no crazy monsters should show up. But they're still crossing their fingers for some good luck. Theo explains that Mariana really didn't want him to leave. And ever since the hero got hurt, she's been watching him 24/7 because Zeke thinks she's being way too overprotective. Zeke's totally cool with it, since he loves his sister just as much as his brother. Theo thanked the kid but warned him to stick close, because if he wandered off, Marie would totally end him. They finally get to the spot, and Theo thanks Hans while asking for a ride back later, but he makes sure to tell him to keep this a total secret. Hans thinks their dad should probably know what's up, but Theo just says he'll deal with him later. As the carriage rolls away, Theo tells his brother it's time to meet Nikolai, his best friend who's going to introduce them, and he reaches out his hand. Zeke figured holding hands was a total big brother move, and as Theo grabbed on, he flashed back to when Zeke was just a little kid doing the exact same thing. She just flashed a smile and told the hero she's got his back today, so he really needs to trust her. The squad trekked past the fountain and over the bridge by the waterfall until Zeke finally threw open the gates. He shouted that they'd finally arrived at a forest made of pure white, and Zeke's jaw literally hit the floor. The kid thinks the place looks incredible, so Theobald explains that the ground is overflowing with magic, which is why every single plant is pure white. This place is crawling with all kinds of monsters, making it the perfect spot for new adventurers. So he warned his brother once again to stay right by his side. Suddenly, Nikolai calls out to Theo, acting totally shocked that they're hunting so soon and asking if he's noticed all the new recruits hanging around. Nikolai spotted Zeke and asked who the little guy was. But once Zeke introduced himself as Theo's brother with such polite manners, Nikolai realized instantly that this was his friend's sibling. The guy pats the kid's head and says they're going to be a killer team. Theo tells Nikolai to quit being so rude, and Zeke decides to pop his Evaluation 1 skill on the Meet Nikolai Baden, a D-rank adventurer who's only got basic water and light powers. Zeke notices he's 3 years older than Theo. He's a total pro with a sword, and his stats are actually super balanced for a D-ranked adventurer. Nikolai asks why the plans. Zeke stepped up with a big idea, and even though he'd totally messed up their plans, he promised to work his tail off if they helped him out. So Nikolai told him to prove he actually had the skills. He noticed the kid was totally forgotten and told him he liked him. So Zeke knew he had to be on his best behavior if he wanted this guy's help. Nikolai tossed the kid onto his shoulders and said it was time to go hunting. And even though Theo freaked out about Zeke falling, Nikolai just told him to stop being overprotective, making Theo realize this guy was seriously weird. As they hiked through the woods, the kid asked his brother why they were just hanging around. Were they seriously trying to set an ambush? Nikolai ratted out Theo just to pay off medical bills since he's totally broke and not some rich noble, living with his sister who's fighting a super serious illness. Suddenly, memories of his mom flashed through Zeke's head. Nikolai admits he was totally broke, but Theo saved the day by paying for his fencing lessons. Zeke finally understood why the guy was being so nice, so he apologized for being clueless and offered him every cent he'd earned to help out. Nikolai tells him not to sweat it because his only job now is to level up. And then he points something out. A white rabbit with a horn was just chilling nearby, so Zeke told everyone to hold up for a second. Today, he's on a mission to hit level 3 and finally master using his evaluation eye right in the heat of battle. The kid checked out the white rabbit and realized its flame and oblivion stats were maxed out, while its darkness and fire were super low, plus he spotted a weak point right by its horn. Nikolai offered to distract the rabbit since those things are crazy fast, but Zeke said he'd just take the shot from right where he was standing. Nikolai pointed out that it was a super long distance. Our hero unleashed ray light and totally crushed the rabbit on his very first try. The guy turned to Theo and said his brother nailed the target on his very first shot. And even though he's only level 1, he's already shooting like a total pro because they've been training for this since they were little kids. The hero suddenly unleashed a massive blast of fire, leaving Theo and Nikolai totally stunned. The guy mentioned Zeke was a total natural since he was a kid, and Nikolai was blown away by how legendary their whole family is. Our hero checked his stats and realized one rabbit wasn't enough to level up, so he asked brother Theo where he could find more of them to take down. He steps up and unleashes a windstorm, shouting that a huge pack is closing in from the northwest, but he can tell there's something else out there too. Nikolai snatched the kid and bolted off for some action, while Theo desperately told them to stop running. He kept taking out rabbit after rabbit until he finally hit level 2. He was totally hyped and told his brother that he finally leveled up. Theo had no idea what his brother was even talking about. Nikolai had to jump in and explain that the kid was just trying to say he'd gotten way stronger. Zeke completely forgot that The guy was super impressed that they managed to snag 8 rabbits all at once, so he told Theo he should definitely start training with them. This guy is probably just as beastly as Zeke. Theo mentions he still hasn't even met their dad yet. Nikolai is honestly blown away by how wild this family is. Our hero. Zeke definitely wants to hit level 3, but he's saving that for later and thanks Nikolai for all the epic things he learned today. Out of nowhere, a pack of goblins lunged at them, and Theo instantly told Zeke to get back. But the goblins didn't even stop. They just zoomed right past them. Nikolai was totally confused as they just sprinted past him. And since Theo says these goblins are the kings of the White Forest, it's super weird to see them running scared. This giant tree just comes flying right over their heads. Nikolai jumped in to shield Zeke while Theo screamed at them to get out of there. Zeke and Nikolai got totally cut off from Theo. Before they could even make a move, a pack of goblins suddenly ambushed them. The guy really thought they had just turned tail and ran. Theo screams that it was a total setup to split them up, and while Nikolai calls them idiots, he admits they actually pulled off a smart move for once, making Theo agree that he's got some serious problems. This massive beast suddenly crawled out of the creepy woods and blocked his path, so the guy screamed at Nikolai to grab Zeke and run before they all got wiped out. That massive beast was the Goblin King, and he's way too overpowered. How did he sneak from the dark woods into the light so quietly? He definitely shouldn't be here. Theo looked down and realized his armor was totally gone. Did he seriously lose it back in that creepy forest? He'd barely made it out after smashing through the barrier. He was definitely having a... Theo tried to shout for Zeke and Nikolai, but he had to dive out of the way as the Goblin King lunged at him. He knows there's absolutely no way they're beating this guy. They've got to find a way to distract him just so they can get away. But he's forced to fight because Nikolai realizes they're totally outnumbered and trapped with nowhere to run, but Zeke screams out that he's jumping in to help. He blasts out a light shockwave and wipes out 3 goblins instantly. Nikolai is totally shocked by how powerful that move is. This kid just took down a whole group of goblins in one. Zeke was looking pretty rough because even though he hit level 3, his strength was still super low and his body just couldn't keep up with his stats. His body is totally giving out and he's about to pass out. And even if he stays awake, he's too beat up to use magic again. So can he actually take everyone down with this one final hit? Theo's clashing with the king and realizes this guy is way tougher than he looks. But suddenly, he spots something strange. Suddenly, massive thorns just burst right out of the ground. He's got no clue what just happened, but those games straight up pierced right through him. Zeke hears his brother scream right before a massive explosion goes off. But Nikolai manages to jump in and shield the kid just in time. The guy warned them they were in massive trouble. He was totally out of juice, and they were definitely the next targets. Zeke activates Evaluation 1 and realizes the monster's weak spot is hidden right under its helmet. So if he lands one massive hit to the head, it's game over. We're going all out because that monster is going to regret ever touching his family, so we have to back Theo up right now. Gert totally jumped Zeke that day, and Theo couldn't do a thing to stop it, leaving him haunted by the memory all night long. He's been fuming about being weak this whole time, so he totally gets why Zeke wants to level up, and he's grabbing his hand because he refuses to lose today or ever. Theo snapped his eyes open, knowing he wasn't finished yet, and reached out to make a grab. Theo warned the monster that it better not even think about getting close to his brother. This dude's name is Nikolai. This guy threw up a glowing barrier and tanked the whole hit. Nikolai screams that the Goblin King is smashing right through the barrier and yells out the guy's name. Theo spins his weapon and triggers his accelerate skill to move at crazy speeds. Then he fired off a whirlwind arrow to seriously mess that monster up. The monster was bleeding out. Nikolai cheered that Theo was doing awesome, but as the beast clutched its wound, Theo just ran out of energy and hit the dirt. Out of nowhere, the monster ripped off his mask and let out a massive growl. The guy couldn't believe he was still alive after a hit like that. Zeke knew his hunch was totally spot on. He told Nikolai to launch him straight at the monster's face. Our hero is going to use his insane strength to totally crush him. He begged Nikolai for help because he couldn't lose his family, and the man looked back like he totally understood. He snatched it up, threw a shield around it, told it he had total faith, and then just sent it flying. He knows he's still got a shot, and he's going all in, summoning a glowing arrow of light to end this. Then he straight up drove his blade right through the monster's head. He unleashed his flame spear, and the whole place lit up with a massive flash. The Goblin King slammed into the dirt, totally wrecked. As Nikolai shouted that the fight was finally over and Zeke realized he'd actually pulled it off, the kid went totally limp and started to fall, so Nikolai rushed over to catch him just as he blacked out. Luckily, Theo managed to slow his fall with a massive hug, and Zeke immediately asked if he was doing okay. He said he was totally fine, but felt bad for getting hurt again, so Zeke just smiled and told him it was all worth it since he saved his brother from that monster, and the kid thanked. Theo was totally shocked at first, but then he flashed a real, honest smile. He pulled his brother into a hug and told him they finally protected each other for once. Nikolai tried to use his healing, but it didn't work at all. It looked like he had. Nikolai was losing it, asking who Zeke really was, what that insane magic was all about, and how he even found the Demon King's weak spot when the rest of his family was nowhere near that level. Theo told them he couldn't say a word yet, because it was all just to keep Zeke safe. Nikolai said he's totally caught up, and when Zeke asked if he was okay, he just laughed it off since he heals super fast and has a ton of stuff he needs to tell them. A literal kid just wrecked a monster that scary. His confidence was basically at zero after that. He promised himself he'd never tell anyone what went down today. Theo thanked him for the help. The monster literally crumbled into ashes, and it's honestly terrifying how strong she is. But Zeke's just hyped that he actually caught Nikolai's interest. Plus, the Goblin King had our hero shaking with fear, which felt super weird since he was already used to being a total loser. Out of nowhere, an assistant shows up and tells Zeke he's living a totally different life now and needs to forget his past forever. He's already leveled up a ton in just 24 hours. There's no way that monster showing up was just a fluke. He's honestly crushing it right now, and God definitely plays favorites, giving the lucky ones a real shot at getting super strong and becoming special. And while Zeke remembers Uncle Willibald talking about this, he never really got what it meant since everyone around him just ends up in pain. Zeke saw a real chance to level up, and he needed that power so he could finally stop everyone around him from suffering. The guy in the cart asks his buddy why it's so quiet, but his friend explains they're helpless without a barrier, apologizing for the mess and swearing he'll get way stronger. Out of nowhere, something slams into them, flipping the horse and the whole wagon right onto its side. Nobody knew why the Goblin King showed up, but he was so massive that everyone just started booking. One guy asks about the cargo, but the other says their lives are way more important and they just book it. This tiny injured kitten just falls right out of those guys' cage. He snapped his eyes open, but the second he saw the Goblin King, he turned and bolted. Fast forward a few months, and Zeke's whole family showed up to watch him hunt down those white rabbits. Our hero decided it was time to start grinding and get his levels up. He really enjoyed hunting those little white rabbits. It was actually pretty exciting for him. Then Mariana came running over to give him. She scooped him up and told him he's gotten crazy strong, and if he keeps this up, he'll be the greatest hero ever. She hugged him tight and called him her sweet brother, but he shot back that she was actually the sweet one. Gilbert is super proud of his son and asks Willie if Zeke takes after him, but Willie says the kid's magic is already flawless and they're just getting started. This dude really thinks he'll be happy with just some basic magic. Zeke's just watching his sister and thinking she's got way too much energy. Gilbert was totally blown away. Mariana could tell Zeke had leveled up big time, and since the Goblin King was already toast, they had to keep the whole thing a total secret. Gilbert heard about the monster's remains and says he's got no clue what went down, but they're looking into it while Alberto keeps a close eye on them to make sure nothing goes. Zeke was shocked by how fast his dad handled everything, And now the monster was just gone with zero explanation, while Mariana kept crushing her little brother in a massive hug as he tried to wiggle. Out of nowhere, the hero spots something moving in the bushes and it totally catches his eye. He let go of his sister and bolted off to check something out, and just as Murray tried to stop him, someone grabbed his shoulder and told him to wait. It was her dad, and he told her the boy would be totally safe to run wild in the White Forest. Right then, she flashed back to the moment Gert lunged straight for little Zeke. She denied every single thing and refused to let him go off alone, so she just started following him. Gilbert saw his daughter was still a total wreck, and Willie mentioned she hasn't left Zeke's side for a second since Gert tried to end him. Then the uncle checked if Theo was okay, and he said he was doing just fine. He thinks Zeke is living his best life right now. Even if he gets a little banged up, it's no big deal at his age. He's just busy learning how the... Willibald pointed out the barrier to Theo and warned that if Zeke crossed it, they'd be stuck searching the entire forest for him. Zeke just followed his gut until he finally ended up exactly where he needed to be. Standing right in front of him was the Holy Tiger, a super rare beast that can use both lightning and ice powers. Zeke tells the beast not to be scared since he read they're super rare and need protection, so he wonders why it's out here all alone. Zeke figures the beast got wrecked when the Goblin King crashed in, and even though it escaped, it's in bad shape and needs help. But the second he tries to get close, the monster just bites him. Even though he was hurting bad, the hero stepped up and used his magic to heal the tiger. Then he just patted his head and told him he was all fixed up. The beast was totally shocked and started licking its wound. So the hero promised him he'd be okay, and the fluffy guy started acting just like a big baby. Zeke saw the baby was totally freaked out and knew something bad went down, while Tiger started flashing back to every single nightmare from his past. His eyes started tearing up, so the hero pulled the baby into a warm hug and told him everything was okay, saying she was just so happy they finally met. The tiger's eyes flashed with respect, and he told the hero he was the real deal, swearing to stay loyal to him forever. A glowing magic circle pops up on the floor. The tiger lunges forward to give the guy a massive hug, and while he's standing there totally confused, an assistant appears to announce that their contract is officially signed. Our hero is totally confused, but the advisor explains he just made a blood contract with the sacred tiger, and the mention of blood completely shocks the kid. The monster explains that swapping blood is how you link your souls to sign a contract, but our hero is totally lost. Could all this be happening just because he licked some of that blood? Out of nowhere, someone grabbed Zeke in a huge hug from behind. It was Marie, and she told her brother he's not allowed to go anywhere alone anymore. But then she realized he'd actually gotten way heavier. She spotted the tiger in her brother's arms and totally freaked out, screaming that it was a straight-up monster. Gilbert asks if they brought a black cat, but Zeke says it's actually white, and that he found it all alone in the White Forest and just had to take it. The dad realizes black cats don't even live in this area. Our hero tells him the magic barrier snapped, which is why he showed up. But he has to keep it a secret that this... Let's reread Rule 1 and 2 carefully. One line in equals one line out. Do not use any line breaks or new lines in your response. One line out. Preserve the sequence exactly. Input 1. Marie said that it was dangerous to keep a monster at home. 2. Zeke countered that when he found... Gilbert stood there with his eyes shut, listening to his daughter protest while his son begged to leave, before he finally turned to look at his boy. He asked if the hero knew they were officially on the report for the monsters they tamed, and the hero just gave a super confident nod. Seeing how much his son really wanted it, the dad finally let him keep the kitten, and even though Marie tried to argue, her father told her to give Zeke a fair shot. The cat and the kid thanked their dad, who looked for the tiger's wounds before realizing his son used healing magic and praising him. Right as Mariana suddenly called out her brother's name, she's making it clear that she's still not backing down from this beast. He's still just a little kid, so she's putting his safety first and taking charge, even though he's totally confused by what his sister is doing. Zeke headed back home to do his thing, but Marie was sticking to him like glue and watching his every move. Tiger tried to act like a harmless little kitten to trick her, but she didn't fall for it at all, reminding him that he's still a monster underneath that cute face. Outside, Zeke tells them they can finally mix freedom and magic to start practicing right there while Marie watches from under a tree. But just as he's about to begin, the beast stops him and asks why he's in such a huge rush. He says he just finished healing up and needs to train like crazy so he's strong enough to keep everyone safe. The beast asked if he was doing it all for his family, and when the guy said yeah, the tiger suddenly tackled him with a huge hug, telling him he's way too kind and definitely needs to smile more. Marie is watching everything go down and she looks totally freaked out. She says he's still acting like such a kid that it's way too dangerous to leave him by himself. And honestly, she's been living in total fear ever since that day. She shook those bad vibes right out of her head to stay focused. But then the monster spotted Marie and charged, forcing Zeke to jump in and try to stop. Later that night, he's just chilling on his bed thinking about how today was a total win. His sister usually visits him before bed, and tonight she finally shows up. Our hero doesn't even flinch or move an inch. Suddenly, the bedroom door swings wide open. Marie walks into the room, and the hero asks what's going on since he thought she was fast asleep, but she just tells him she came by to see him. It's been forever, but she finally wants to sleep right by his side again. She asked her brother for the okay, and he was totally caught off guard. Our hero is just laying on the bed with his sister, totally clueless about how he even ended up in this situation. He saved a hurt tiger in the White Forest, and his dad actually let him keep it. But he was worried it would attack someone, and honestly, he was right to be scared. He never thought he'd actually end up sleeping next to the guy. He was sure his magic would never get any stronger. He literally begged God for the strength and patience to handle it. If he levels up, he's finally going to be a monster hunter, but the only way to get stronger is by actually taking those beasts down. His stats are still super low though, so he hits a massive speed boost and slips right out of his sister's arms. This was his first time ever using the power, and since he actually pulled it off, all that training in the White Forest definitely paid off. Suddenly, someone sneaks up behind him. He thinks it's his sister at first, but it's actually the tiger. He warns that if Marie wakes up, he told him to stay put and guard his little sister. Then he triggered his speed boost and vanished in a total blur. Tiger caught his sister saying Zick's name, so he marched over to the bed, did a quick spin, and bolted out of there. He flung the window open and just leaped straight out. Our guy is already deep in the White Forest, but his body is too worn out to keep spamming his speed boost, so he's got to chill for a second to recharge. But he's totally running out of time. He's been training like a madman just to get a tiny bit stronger. Since he's been leveling up, his magic power has shot through. Our hero pulls out a sick ice block move. He's totally hyped about it. Now he's got a brand new trick in his bag and he's already gearing up. Then he switches it up and unleashes his Thunder Demon skill. A dark shadow suddenly popped up right in front of him, and he totally thought it was his brother. He had absolutely no clue what was even going on. The demon lunges at him, but the hero just begs him to knock it off. Zeke pulled the trigger and the demon vanished in a flash. He hit the floor in total shock, knowing he barely escaped death, and that flash of lightning brought all that pure terror rushing back to him. The kid slammed onto the dirt, realizing this magic was way too dangerous to mess with, while the assistant rushed to call the boss. He's totally out of mana, and his body is just done, which is why he collapsed and needs to recharge. As Zeke starts blacking out, all he can think about is how he flashed back to the moment the tiger asked him if he was actually scared. Even while he was right there with his mom, he realized he already had a special girl on his mind. To make things worse, his brother Gert was absolutely livid with him. Gert's convinced. He's honestly convinced he's just a total weakling who's way too scared to act. White rabbits swarm the boy as he starts to pass out from exhaustion, but just then, a familiar face comes racing toward him. The next morning, everyone is scrambling like crazy trying to find where Mr. Seatbelt went. Anna heads to the right wing while Theo uses his wind magic to confirm Zeke and the beast are gone. So they need to search a wider area since he can't be far. But Maria is. She's convinced the beast snatched Seatbelt, and the maid mentions a witness who actually saw the monster. But when Mariana asks if Sieg was with it, the maid says he was. The tiger leaped right out of the master's window and bolted for the White Forest, making her think she was seeing things since everyone was supposed to be totally passed out. She's sure the beast snatched Zeke and decides to head for the White Forest, but Theo yells that it's way too dangerous and says he'll go instead. The second she stepped out the gate, she spotted something weird way off in the distance. The beast is struggling to carry Zeke as Mariana sprints over to check on them, but the creature just hits the ground, completely out of steam. She pets the panting animal and realizes it's the one that actually carried the boy all the way here. Mariana scoops Zeke up and checks his pulse, finding him alive but totally out cold, and now she's stuck wondering what her next move should be. She sees the beast get back up, and it walks right over to sniff her hand. Seeing what the beast did totally melts her heart. So she decides she's going to save them both and pulls them into a massive hug. Zeke snaps his eyes open and wonders why he feels so warm, only to see Sister Marie holding his head with her hair blowing wild. She tilts her head and sees he's finally awake, crying happy tears that it actually happened, while Zeke looks at her and asks what just went down. Mariana pulls Zeke into a huge hug, telling him she was totally freaking out, but as he says sorry, his dad walks in and calls out his full name. His dad is hyped he's alive, but he starts yelling because Marie Anna snitched that Zeke went into the White Forest alone at night, and Zeke just owns up to it. Marie asks her brother if this is for real and if anyone forced the boy, but the hero just says he went there totally on his own. His sister asks why he went to such extremes, but Zeke realizes he can't tell them about his teleportation and OP magic, or his family will just freak out even more. He's stressing even more about what to tell his family, while his dad just sits there in silence, trying to figure out the situation himself. His dad isn't letting this slide, so he grounds the kid for 2 weeks with a guard to watch his every move, and even though Zeke is salty, he says he gets it right as his dad tells him he's a special kid and everyone's counting on him, so he's sure the hero had a real reason for what he did. His dad keeps the lesson going, grabs the hero's hand, and tells him not to sweat it even if Zeke is hiding something, leaving the kid totally shocked by how real his father. His dad tells him the whole family is super strong and he never has to face his fears alone, which honestly makes Zeke feel even more emotional. He remembers his family kicking butt and realizes they're all super tough, so even if he isn't strong enough yet, he knows they'll be totally fine, and he starts to tear. Marie Ann spots the boy's tears, and he finally breaks, explaining he just wanted to practice magic but was scared people would freak out if he used his most powerful spells. Zeke keeps sobbing, terrified that history is repeating itself, and as he apologizes to everyone, his sister breaks down while his dad realizes Zeke remembers everything about Lyra's fate. Marie pulls Zeke into a tight hug and tells him she hates what he's saying. She promises that she'll never let something like that happen again. Our hero keeps sobbing in his sister's arms. Their dad watches them, looking totally crushed by guilt. The dad agrees Marie is right and says they're all gonna make it. Then he drops to his knees to hug the kids and swears he'll never let anyone take them away. Our hero is laying in bed with the beast, feeling super embarrassed that he finally broke down and cried, especially since his big brothers saw the whole thing. Zeke looks at his hand and realizes the weight is finally lifting, knowing he needs to get stronger for his family, but also that he can actually lean on them, so he decides to stop hiding, and finally, our hero thanks the beast for bringing Zeke home safe, because who knows what would have happened in that creepy white forest, and the beast just saved him out of love. Even roll. Zeke gives the little guy a big belly rub to show some love, but then he suddenly realizes he hasn't even picked out a name for it yet. Zeke feels like a total failure for not thinking of this sooner, and while the little creature looks on in shock, Zeke twirls his finger near its nose and explains that since everyone calls him Zeke, his new buddy needs a name of its own too. He points right at the animal's nose and decides its name is Hockey, asking the little guy if he's actually down with it. The little guy is obsessed with his new name, charging over to Zeke and wagging his tail like crazy, and while Zeke is stoked they're already best friends, Hockey totally feels the same way. Inside the Abel mansion, the dad tells Lyra he finally realized Zeke still remembers their time together, and he thinks those memories are a total mix of happiness and sadness for the guy. The man looks at the girl's photo and says the boy is leveling up way too fast, calling him the biggest prodigy their family has ever seen. Just as the dad is about to tell Lyra his theory, he's cut off when the oldest sons burst in with major news about the White Forest. The dad hypes up his son and asks for the results, so Alberto checks the report and reveals that the magic ash from months ago was actually a goblin's body, proving the monster smashed the barrier to get into the White Forest. But the second son points out there's still one huge question left. The second son asks the big question: who actually took down this B-rank beast? Everyone starts picturing Zeke in the middle of the fight, and even the dad is convinced his son Siegby. Alberto shouts that Zeke is definitely talented, but it can't be him since he hasn't mastered top-tier magic yet. And even though the second brother gets where he's coming from, he still totally disagrees. The second brother remembers Theo bumping his wound during the report and starts wondering how a powerful mage like him even got hurt in the White Forest. Alberto thinks Theo is just covering for Zeke, and since the other brother totally sees it too, their dad decides that if there's even a tiny chance Zeke is involved, they have to step in and protect him. Alberto says the ashes drifted into the city, and now everyone thinks a B-rank monster was killed. But our guy already started a rumor that the first squad commander was the one who actually took it down. Alberto remembers they kept everything a secret thanks to their best friend Teal, who's a total vault, while the second brother gives major props to the squad's first commander. The second brother reveals he's already snatched up all the ashes for his experiments, since the kid was just about to craft a new magic stone, and he wants to use them as a key ingredient. Dad tells Alberto to keep an eye on Zeke, and Alberto's totally down, promising to do anything for his little bro, while the second brother mentions that Zeke is nothing like Gert, who everyone. The second brother warns that Zeke's power needs to stay a secret, and the dad totally agrees because he just wants his son to live a free life. The dad stares at Lyra's photo and says this is exactly what they both want. He says he'll finally feel good about getting married, but then the second brother brings up that monster hunt their dad was actually guilty of. The second brother just scoffs, saying he used to blame Theo and Zeke, but now he realizes the whole family is guilty, which makes his dad and Alberto feel totally called out. His dad realizes Siegbelt isn't just a little kid anymore after he braved the White Forest all alone, and he's seriously wondering if the guy used a teleportation stone to get there so fast. The second brother points out that a stone like that costs a fortune since it's packed with fire and light magic, and since the guy is convinced Zeke actually learned teleportation, he decides. Alberto awkwardly brings up how his dad promised the kid could see Zeke in action, but he totally missed out because of work. The dad sighs, wondering if this is what the big brother was talking about, as a stone suddenly pops into his hand that the kid realizes is actually holding a secret note. Dad reveals he caught Zeke on a secret camera, and while Alberto thinks he's a legend, the second brother is totally annoyed because he thinks they're both messing up again. The dad and brothers are all watching the footage, and Alberto is totally losing it over how cute his little brother looks. Their dad explains that the kid already knows healing magic and even patched up his pet, making the older brother brag that he'd expect nothing less from his own flesh and blood. The second brother peeks from behind Alberto and his dad, asking them to scoot over so he can see the action too, and then the next day finally rolls around. Zeke looks at the second brother and asks for some magic lessons, so the guy just smiles and tells him to give it a shot. The brother explains he taught magic to every elder except Gert because he ran out of time, and he warns Zeke that he's going to be a super tough teacher with zero mercy, but his brother is hyped to hear that, but warns him the real grind starts now, and Zeke is totally itching to begin since he's already studied every single thing about him. The boy checks out Willibald's stats and sees his level, magic, and insane physical traits, realizing this wind spirit friend is actually his brother and he's a total beast. Zeke realizes this kid is totally stacked with high-level stats and some seriously insane magic power. Zeke figures the bad guys are shaking in their boots because of Willibald, so he's determined to work his butt off since the hero hasn't mastered the ultimate magic yet, and Zeke checks out the mage's stats and wonders what a wind spirit even is, while Willibald gives him a really deep, thoughtful look. The magician checks out Zeke's skills and realizes the kid is a total beast, and now he's hyped to see what kind of hero he'll actually become. Willibald thinks Zeke is a super interesting kid and knows he's going to be a total blast to play with. Zeke senses something and starts spinning around to find it. And while the magician wonders if the kid can actually master teleportation or if he's just overhyping him, he realizes the hero. The boy and the mage spot a beast charging their way to show them something, so the hero calls out to the creature. Haki shows off a branch he ripped from the very top of the tree, totally waiting for everyone to hype him up. Zeke pets and hypes up the little creature as its tail wags like crazy, making the magician wonder if this is the same animal the boy saved earlier. The hero realizes it's the same beast named Haki, who actually wants to meet the red-haired mage, and Willibald can't get over how adorable the little guy is. The guy is totally shocked by this creature, realizing he's never seen anything with fur that white in his entire life. The mage gives Haki props for his sick lightning and ice combo, and the little guy is so hyped he decides this dude is a total legend. Zeke's totally relieved because he thinks his hiding spell on Haki worked, but Willibald senses a super weird flow of magic. The magician asks Haki if he can touch it, and before Zeke can even process what's happening, the teacher is already busy petting the creature. While he strokes the animal, the teacher mentions there. The teacher confirmed it was leftover magic from his spells, warning him that if he didn't fix it, his entire magic flow would just shut down. Zeke looked totally stressed and mentioned his sister already cured Haki, but when he was told a basic fix wouldn't work, he asked for something way more intense. The teacher realized the animal was actually cursed, and since not even healing magic could fix it, Zeke was totally stunned. Zeke flipped his ability on and finally saw the curse, totally shocked that he'd missed it the first time. He started apologizing to Haki for missing the signs, but Willowball told him to chill since even an adult would have struggled to see it, right when the mage noticed a totally creepy vibe coming off him. The magician grabs a bit of Hockey's wool and asks to use it, explaining he needs it to track down the guys who did this and make them pay. He said Hockey still can't use magic, and the pet was super upset because it just wanted to help its owner, so Hick asked if there was anything he could do to change that. The magician says purification would totally work, but that's just not his thing. This is high-level magic he hasn't even learned yet, and it takes way too long to pull off. So Zach looked at his pet with a sad face and said they had to. Right then, my dad's words flashed through my head. Never forget that you can always count on your family. Suddenly, an idea clicked, and he told Uncle Willie he knew exactly who could help. After Marie saw what that cocky status actually did, she felt totally bad for the little guy. Zeke heard his sister finally mastered purification magic and asked for her help, and while Marie was totally down to join them, she told him there was just one catch. She apologizes for not having enough magic, but Willie tells her it's totally fine since almost nobody her age can pull this off, though she just looks down and stays quiet. The magician spots her and calls her name, but she just pulls a stone out of her pocket and tells him she's actually got something for him. The teacher asks if it's a magic purification stone, and Marie confirms it's a special gift her mom gave her before she passed away. She used to only have light magic, but she worked her heart out to finally master purification. She grinded for ages to master the skill, but she was just too slow, and now her mom was way too far gone for a basic cleanse to work. She looked at Zik and told him their mom actually started feeling way better right after he was born. She kept going, explaining that the stone was packed with purification magic and she'd been saving it for a moment just like this. Maria told Hockey that with the power of that stone, she could totally save him. Zeke noticed his pet was acting weird and asked what was wrong, so the pet sadly told him that the item meant everything to Marie and he definitely shouldn't use magic. She started to wonder if Kaki didn't trust her, but he told her it was actually the opposite. He was just worried because he knew how much that stone meant to her. Feeling way better, she turned to Kaki and finally apologized for ever doubting him, thanking him for saving Zeke's life. He says he's basically family now and asks her to help him out. After hearing all that, the pet walks right up to the girl and starts nuzzling her to show her some serious love and thanks. Sister Zeke gripped the stone and thanked her pet for trusting her. She chucks the stone high into the air and boom, it's finally activated. The stone's magic hit Hockey, and as Mari saw it working, Hockey started jumping for joy because he finally felt warm and full of life again. The magician watched the jumping animal and confirmed the magic was totally normal, so Zeke thanked his sister for the win while the heroine felt awesome for helping out. Willyball decided to give it a shot and told Hockey to repeat after him to make it snow, and Fluffy totally got the plan and agreed. Aki strikes a pose and blasts magic from his paws into the ground, making snow start falling everywhere. The guys were totally blown away by what they saw, and even the teacher was amazed, saying it felt like he'd just stepped into a massive white forest. The pet was having a blast in the snow, feeling super hyped that he could finally help his owner out. Zeke thought it'd be awesome to build a snowman. Kaki kept asking questions too. The magician saw the kids having a blast and decided to skip the lesson to celebrate Hockey finally getting better. A girl pops out of the bushes and catches the guys building a snowman, thinking it looks totally hilarious. And he's just itching to go play with Zeke as soon as possible. The boys were grinding their training, and Zeke was super hyped that he blasted a hole with fire without melting the ice, and Kaki managed to pull it off too. The teacher was hyped, telling them their fire control and teamwork were top tier, and it's clear that Hockey is already a total natural with magic. He said they totally crushed their work for the day, then scooped up his pet as they both celebrate. Willie headed off to find his brother, telling the boys to keep training without him, and Zeke gave him a quick thanks as they split up. Willibald was just chilling on the sofa with some tea and cake, giving his brother a casual greeting the second he saw him. His brother apologized for being late, but Willie was totally chill about it since he'd just finished tutoring Zeke, and when his brother asked how the kid was doing, Willie told him his student. The magician trained Zeke for months and saw how hungry he was to learn, since the kid would try to copy even the toughest moves the second he saw them. Zeke's imagination skill is on another level, and he just spawned a massive skyscraper, leaving the magician totally clueless about where he's getting these crazy ideas from. Willie took a quick look at his brother's head, but Zeke totally hated it and told him to stop, so Willie just laughed it off and said he was only joking since Zeke definitely wasn't. He told him he'd just given him a mission to master his magic, and if he nails it, he's finally free to go back to the real world. His brother repeated exactly what Willie said, showing everyone that he's actually putting in the work. Willie starts geeking out about hockey since he's a total pro, and then he mentions this insane black cat that actually controls lightning and ice. His brother cut him off, saying he's got to master the two strongest elements. Even Willie was seeing this for the very first time. There's so much wild stuff happening around the box that Willibald realized that hockey was being poached, and his brother hung on every word as he took in the news. Hockey still had that tracking spell on him, so Willie snatched it off and chucked it deep into the forest of silence. That poacher was totally gunning for Cocky, and while the brother wondered what was happening, he had only one thing on his mind. Willie just gave a satisfied smirk and said, "Who knows, it could totally happen." Willie's pretty sure they're safe now, but just in case, he's ready to slap that family talisman on him as a last resort. He asks his brother for the perfect design to make Cocky happy, and that's when the older brother realizes his little bro actually loves the pet. Willibald says he's a total sweetheart who follows every rule, and he's just hyped the family is getting bigger, while his brother points out that Willie has always been obsessed with his family. Willie claims his brother is a total family man, but the brother just shuts him down and says, "Yeah, not really." He dumps a literal mountain of love letters in front of his brother, bragging that every single one is for him. Willie isn't even shocked when his brother holds up another letter, teasing him about being so popular that people are bugging him now, and he just wants Willie to stop already. He's fine with his brother being a loner for now, but if he keeps this up, he's sending him straight to the Magic Squad, and his brother would do anything to avoid that. The brother just flashed a smug grin and told them there was absolutely nothing they could do about it. Zeke trained like crazy, but he still couldn't handle the magic, and it was honestly starting to drive him nuts. He actually pulls it off, but he just can't keep it together for long. Zeke figured if he could just master making glass stones, he'd finally be ready to use some high-level magic. Zeke stared at the sacred stone and asked if it still had any power, but Mary told him it was just a normal piece of glass now, so he kept questioning her about it. His sister explains that it's just a piece of glass stuffed with magic, and even though there's nothing holy about it, they still call it a sacred stone. The kid was totally hooked and asked if adding more magic would finally make it work, and she told him he could use any power at all, even stuff he didn't actually have. That glass stone is insanely tough and can tank even the most powerful magic, so Zeke gave it a super close look. She told him he could have the stone if he wanted, and Zeke realized that if he made more of them, he'd be able to use all kinds of high-level magic. When things get desperate, that stone kicks in even if your body can't handle the power. He figured the stone needed some magic sand too, so he locked in and used his powers to carefully fuse the sand right into it. But he just couldn't pull it off, and even though the rock started to float for a second, it suddenly crashed down and crumbled into dust, making Zeke totally lose his cool as he threw his... The hero's appraisal eye popped up and told him that this magic sand wasn't going to cut it. Uncle Willie gave him that sand and some juice for magic training, so our hero is totally convinced the guy is actually a good person. The appraisal eye shows the sand is a solid level A, but it's just not a match for that level S stone, which is definitely why Zika is failing. He needs to track down some S-rank magic sand or better, but he's got no clue where he's even supposed to find it. That creepy eye told him he could actually collect the silence from the woods for a much easier path, so our hero asked what the deal was. I pulled up the Forest of Spirits on the screen to explain the rankings, but Zeke just kept asking more questions. The eye told him that Forest was loaded with magic sand and rare loot, but Zeke said no way since he didn't know the path, so his assistant told him to chill and promised to be the best guide ever. He asked if they were dipping out right now, and before our hero could even process the rush, a wild wind started blowing through the room out of nowhere. Suddenly, this stunning girl appears out of the wind, smiling as she tells Zeke she finally found him, leaving our hero totally shook. Suddenly, this girl pops up and tackles Zeke with a massive hug, shouting that she finally found him, while Zeke stands there totally clueless asking who she even is. The girl said she was always forbidden from seeing him, but the second she got the okay, she rushed straight to his side, making Zeke ask who finally gave her permission. Hockey spots a random girl hugging his owner and hops right onto her head, and even though she acts like she'll let the hero go, she notices Zeke is sweating like crazy just as... She tells him it's wild he's saying stuff like that since he's a sacred tiger, but then she realizes he's actually trying to hide. He asks if he wants to keep the secret safe, and Cocky's like, "Yeah, you seriously can't tell anyone." She claims she's never even seen the box before, but then she realizes it's packed with secret powers, making her true identity a total mystery. Uncle Zika stepped up and faced Frau to make sure she didn't mess anything up with the box. He snapped his fingers to force all three of them apart, and the girl was super annoyed that Willie got in her way. The kid turned to his uncle and told him his friend was seriously bugging him. He starts the introductions, revealing she's actually the spirit of Frau, and she's totally stoked to meet him. She's got a deal with Willy, and Zeke kept pushing for answers about that spirit. He peeked at the wind spirit on her screen and realized right then that he was totally clueless. The magician tells them not to freak out because even though humans and spirits have always been enemies, she's actually super chill with people. Frau teased that she only acts this way with people she finds cool. But Willy told her to knock it off, so she quickly promised she wasn't trying to be mean. It finally clicked for him. She could see right through his hiding magic because she's a spirit. The magician realized Zeke can see spirits that normal people can't, so he told him to keep Frau a secret, and the kid totally agreed. Frau asks Zeke if he's ever seen a spirit before, and when he says she's the first one, she gets way too hyped, making him feel totally sketched out. The spirit hugged the boy and promised to protect him forever, saying that since Willibald cares about him, she's got his back too. She leaned in close, pressing her forehead against his, and told Zeke he was so interesting she couldn't help being curious, which made him feel super awkward. Then she asked why Willibald walked over and let the spirit say hi, but wouldn't let it bug him, so Frau pouted and called him a meanie because she just wanted to get a good look at. The boys headed out into the city, and the girl was totally hyped, following them even though she was a bit confused since it had been forever since she'd actually been outside. The magician pointed out she'd totally stand out, but Zeke was way ahead of him and decided to just tell the teacher about it later. Frau turned to Zeke and told him that since she was in such a great mood, she'd finally give him what he wanted, making the hero's eyes sparkle as he asked what it was. The spirit is only asking because he's dying to get his hands on that magic sand. Zeke asks if she's got any, and she tells him she's empty-handed right now, but she can definitely get it to him. She asked if he wanted some magic sand from the spirit forest, but the teacher said Zeke is way too strong for that stuff to even work on him. Frau said it was fine for practice. So Zeke got hyped to craft a stunning glass stone just like the one Marie made. Willy agreed his student was totally right, but since he couldn't hand it over yet, Zeke asked if he was just too busy. Turns out he's got a massive experiment coming up, and since she's stuck at work and he's due back any second, he's got absolutely no time to train. He kept apologizing while they played hockey, but the hero told him not to sweat it, knowing his uncle was just totally swamped with work. His workplace is packed with all kinds of cool stuff, so Frau jumps into the convo and offers to deliver it herself. But Willy shuts her down instantly. If she actually pulls this off, regular people won't get it and they're going to be totally freaked out. Even in her human form, she can't be left alone because she has zero self-control, and the spirit rudely mocked her for already knowing that. But honestly, she just wanted to see Zeke happy. Zeke jumped in and grabbed everyone's attention, asking, "Is it actually possible?" He stood his ground and told them he was heading straight for the magic group himself. The magician asked if he was down to go. The boy told him it was his dream, and he said he just had to see it for himself. Frau was super hyped and kept gushing about how awesome everything was. This was their very first time visiting the place. Willy was also pretty happy, but he had a few things on his. He figures Zeke can totally handle it and gives him the green light, so our hero gives a massive happy thank you. He was totally losing it with joy because he'd been so curious this whole time, and now the big day was finally here. Kaki held onto his master and begged to go with them, but his uncle shut him down and told him he had to stay behind. He's a totally one-of-a-kind creature, so those lab guys just won't stop messing with him. He said he was down for it, and honestly, the rest of the squad was too. Hearing that, Kaki totally changed his mind and stayed home, and Zeke agreed it was the right move, giving his little buddy some major props. As they parted ways, Willy promised to tell his brother everything and warned Zeke to stay safe and not mess up because he'd be waiting, and the kid totally took his uncle's words to heart. Frau asked if he could actually handle it, but the hero said he'd be totally fine since he's just riding in a cart with his uncle. Right there, the hero promised he was totally coming back this time. The spirit warned him to stay safe, and Kaki, while being held by Flo, promised he'd be waiting for his master to come back. Theo told Zeke he was a good kid and wished him luck on his trip, and Zeke actually listened to his brother. The hero waved goodbye and started heading off. The guys at the wagon yelled that everything was ready, and Seatbelt gave them a quick thanks. He dashed over to the cart, gave his family a quick wave, and told them he was finally heading out. Sigbelt was totally restless in the carriage, constantly asking if the capital was close, while Hans remembered this was actually his first time ever seeing the big city. He remembers that time he and Mr. Theobald hunted down a total nightmare of a monster. Turns out, that whole mission was actually a massive secret. Our hero thanks the guy for the info. Master Virwald leads the third magic order, and these guys are the absolute best of the best. They're total pros at both fighting wars and handling everyday business. They spend all their time researching. Hans starts talking again, asking if his dad can see the table yet, but Zeke is already glued to the window, checking everything out. They finally made it to the massive capital city. The magic building sits right on the west side of the capital, but that research center is stashed away in a secret spot somewhere else. Hans tells the hero not to worry about the creepy scientists, especially since his own uncle is right there with them. The kid totally blabbed again, and after realizing his mistake, he just laughed and begged Zeke to keep his mouth shut. Hans finally makes it to the magic building, but he's immediately blocked by a girl who says that only Mr. Siegbert is allowed to go inside. Hans tried to say the hero was way too young and that they were supposed to protect him, but the girl totally stood her ground. The girl who showed up with the crew was totally losing it, but Zanz told her to chill since rules are rules. And besides, those guys will be just fine on their own, right? His partner kept saying no way to the deal, but Zeke stepped in to say it was all good and told them to just chill in the capital until he got back. Our hero was low-key terrified of the girl leading him, even though she promised she'd keep him totally safe. The girl turns around and Zeke follows her, waving off his guards who are stressing out and telling him to be careful. Our guy was finally about to hit up that research center, and he was so hyped to see what was inside that his heart was literally pounding. The girl leading him told him to watch his step as she kept walking through the dark, rainy hallway. He watches her walk away without even looking back, so he nervously asks if she's really leaving him behind and if she's actually not going to wait for him. He got pretty annoyed since he swore he could handle things solo, so he bolted after the girl. They told our hero to hang tight because that door was finally about to swing open. Zeke stood right in front of those massive black doors and admitted he was officially freaked out. He reaches the end of a long, dark hallway and finds a massive door, but he has absolutely no clue what kind of place he's just found. The door swings wide and a massive flash of light hits them so hard they can't even see. Suddenly, a massive research lab with a giant tree pops out from behind the light. Our hero can't believe his eyes. It's way bigger than anything Zeke ever imagined. There, Siegbelt asked what was oozing out of that tree, wondering if it was actually just sap. She spun around and confirmed it was the truth, admitting that's exactly what it was. Our hero totally recognized this stuff from a book, knowing it's the secret ingredient for crafting insane magic gear and super strong medicine. He made it clear that this tree is actually a super big deal and totally one of a kind. He caught her staring and immediately apologized, saying it just slipped out. The girl starts spilling the tea on this tree that's been around since before the lab was even built. And even though it's already massive, it's still getting bigger. Which Z? Amirata is basically a huge deal to these guys. They even take all the leftover scraps from their research and use it as fertilizer for the tree. Every single day, they're busy studying. The hero finally realizes that Amrita and the research center are basically keeping each other alive. And the girl says that's exactly what's happening. The crew pulled up to the Department of Magical Research. Zeke was blown away by how gorgeous the place looked, and the girl pointed out that the head was right behind the blue door. Right after saying that, she spins around to leave, and when the hero asks if she's actually going, she just asks if he needs her to repeat herself since the next chapter is waiting right behind that blue door. Zig realized they wouldn't be leaving until the very end, and she was dying to just hang out and chat for the whole week. She stopped and told him there was no rush if he wanted to see everything, and looking at her, he realized she was an explorer at heart too. He swings the door open and spots a bunch of scientists in uniforms working around a massive stone hanging right in the middle of the room. He shut the door behind him and stepped right into the research center. It was actually his uncle, so Zeke ran over to say he'd finally arrived, but when he tried to ask about Frowel, his uncle stopped him right there. He says some people at the lab can actually see ghosts, so he's gonna hide her somewhere else instead. She told the hero to hurry up, but he just laughed and said he wasn't worried one bit. Zeke was totally caught off guard when he saw that shiny stone right in front of his face. The uncle knew the kid already figured it out, but he said it anyway. It was a brand new teleportation stone. Normally, these teleport stones only go to one spot, but they're making a new version that links a bunch of places together so you can send whatever you want anywhere you choose. The formula is finally finished, so now they're testing if they can actually teleport stuff to the right spot, which is a ton of work since they'll have to redo all the... Zeke thinks the plan sounds super confusing but totally awesome, and Uncle is all in because if this works, it'll change travel forever and they won't even need carriages anymore. Now it's time to show our hero the rest of the place. There are different squads for the magic, the enchanted gear, and even that massive tree outside. The kid asks for the full tour. The guy just laughed at that attitude and told them to chill out. Out of nowhere, a massive explosion just went off. The researchers were totally clueless about what was happening, but that stone definitely just did something crazy. The blast was ripping through everything. They had to shut that stone down fast, and Uncle was totally freaking out about Zig. The blast was so blinding he couldn't even open his eyes, and he had no clue what was actually going on. The room was totally trashed, and Zig was just kneeling there in the middle of the mess. Some guy nearby sounded totally lost, asking if Zig was finally awake. Turns out it was his uncle, and he was just super relieved the hero didn't get hurt during the teleport. They asked how he was doing, and Zig said he was totally fine but wanted to know where they actually were. The mage told them they were probably stuck deep in the dungeon. Our guy was totally stunned, but Willie had already scoped the place out and realized it was just a low-level dungeon. The mage was totally lost on why they got warped here, wondering if they messed up the spell. But since the mistake wasn't that huge, someone else must have sabotaged them. Zeke called up his smart uncle, but even he was totally confused about why they were forced to teleport. The teleport stone didn't have any set coordinates, and since the destination shifted like crazy, they've got to figure out a way to escape this place fast. Our hero asks if they can just warp out of there, but he's told it's a total no-go because this dungeon has way too many rules blocking his powers. Dungeons are popping up all over the planet, and once you step inside, you'll see everything from sunny fields to frozen mountains. But since nobody knows if these places are even real, every country. Truth is, nobody knows why these places even exist. You're totally blocked from teleporting inside, and they literally swallow up anyone who dies there like a massive creepy trap. Deep in these dungeons, you can find items that literally change the whole world, and they're so weird that experts think they actually fell out of another dimension. Dungeons are basically death traps, but if you survive to the end, you get to learn the secrets of the universe, and Zig was so pumped he immediately asked if that meant there was... Willie told him not to get his hopes up since the dungeon looked like it was already cleared. And that's when the kid finally put the pieces together. He still had no clue how that TV dungeon just warped them away, and he wondered if his crazy skill was behind it all over again. Uncle told them they're heading up to find the exit, and if the boss shows up, they'll just take him out and go back down. The mage leaned in close, asking Zig if he really wanted to take down the local boss all by himself. Our hero was totally stunned by the offer, but the guy told him it was the perfect chance to show off his progress because a real fight beats practice any day. He took a second to think and realized his uncle was totally right, but he still wasn't sure if he could actually take down the boss. The local boss was the Red Sword King, a B-rank monster, and the hero had to ask again just to make sure he heard that right. He's only ever faced a B-rank goblin general with his brother backing him up, but now he's got to handle everything all by himself. Zeke thought it was totally impossible, but the teacher called him out, asking if he was sure since Willie actually believed he could pull it off. He laughed and said he was totally sure, but the hero was low-key freaking out, wondering if his uncle seriously had no clue about the goblin general. Willibald kept acting like the dungeon was a total joke, claiming he could just bolt to the next floor whenever he wanted, and then he straight up dared the guy to try it himself. Right as they were talking, a mysterious voice suddenly caught them off guard. A girl's voice suddenly echoes out, leaving them both totally confused since they're supposed to be all alone in this dungeon. The mage instantly knew the boss fight was about to go down, but he had no clue why he felt that way. Zig dashed toward the voice, knowing something was up and he'd need backup, while Willie tried his best to hold the kid back. He burst out of the building and saw something that made him freeze right where he stood. Turns out it's a girl with animal ears just hanging from a web. Our hero was completely frozen in disbelief, but his uncle was actually loving every second of it. Rocks were floating all around the girl while two massive stone monsters stood right in front of the door, blocking her way out. The magician looked at Zig and asked if he was finally ready to go. Willie gets closer to the monsters and tells the hero to show off his new skills, and just like that, the fight is on. The guy looks closer and realizes there are two coal spiders right in front of him, and since these are Earth-type monsters, one of them instantly fires a web straight at the heroes. Siegbert was totally frozen, but Willie jumped in to save him, grabbing the baby and blocking the webs with his sword while telling the kid to aim for the eyes and legs just like they. Things just got way more intense since they were facing actual monsters, but the guy just nodded and stood tall against a beast made of stone. Knowing its secret gave him the perfect edge. He whips out a wind magic move called Blade. These air attacks are crazy sharp, cutting just like real knives. They slice the spider's legs right off, making the monster go absolutely berserk. Willie starts hyping the kid up for the warning just as a spider tries to sneak up from behind, but he's too quick and jams his sword right into its open mouth. The knight moved like a total pro and sliced that monster into tiny bits. But then he apologized for not leaving it for training, which just made Siegbert laugh super awkwardly. Once the monsters were finished, the guy suggested letting the survivors out of the cocoons, and the hero was totally down for it. Willie slashed the threads holding the cocoons, sending them all plummeting, but he managed to lunge forward and catch the girl before she could fully transform and hit the ground. She snapped out of it the moment she felt Seabird's hands on her, weakly asking him who he actually was, when suddenly a giant dude with a floating girl on his shoulder burst. The second he let her go, she bolted straight to her mistress, totally relieved she was okay. She took a good look and told Mrs. Dye that everyone could see her animal ears, so she rushed to check the magic tool that hid her true identity, only to find out it was totally busted. The servants told the lady to chill because they'd known her secret for a long time, but Siegbert just couldn't understand why everyone was so worried about her having animal ears. He threw his cloak over to Dia so she could cover up, and when the man spotted him and asked who he was, the hero was totally frozen. But Willie saved him by telling the guys The big guy recognized Will's outfit and realized he was a mage, so after the lady told her people they were saved, the knight told the thankful man to give all the credit to the kid instead. The guy walks up to Siegbert to thank him for being a total hero, which makes the kid feel super awkward, but then he mentions they saved 2 more people who are still passed out and says they need to check the rest of the cocoons. Willie didn't really care but warned them it was a waste of time, and sure enough, when they ripped open a cocoon, all they found was empty armor and clothes. The mage then dropped a truth bomb. Anything that dies in this dungeon, including people, completely rots away in just a few hours. Those coal spider cocoons literally suck the life out of anyone inside. Because of that, anyone caught dies almost instantly. The heroes were totally freaked out when they heard the news. The big guy thought, our hero walks up to the girl he just saved. Her assistant is sitting right there next to her. The Beastman looks totally crushed by everything that happened. All those knights who got taken out by the guy felt totally guilty for showing up way too late to save her. She told him straight up that it wasn't his fault at all. Diana tried to act like she was fine, but the guy explained his cook packed these snacks for the trip, claiming they're so delicious they'll make you forget all your worries, and he even took a bite first to prove they weren't poisoned. Diana wasn't really feeling the cookies at first, but after she took a bite, her face totally lit up because they were actually amazing. Zig was hyped she liked it and even tried giving Emma some snacks, but she turned him down saying she wasn't worth the effort, right as Pal walked up to join them. He grabbed all the gear from the fallen knights while the mage set up a magic tent, explaining they'd do the same for the rescued warriors once they woke up, which totally shocked Zig since he had no clue his uncle even had tents in his stash. Diana was super thankful to the magician but had no clue how to show it. So she turned to the nice guy, thanked him for the candy, and then suddenly jumped up to apologize for not even telling them her name yet. Siegbert had no clue, but he was actually looking at the kingdom's 3rd princess, Diana von Estonia, and he was totally blown away that he'd just saved a member of the royal Tapolskiki. Willie already had the tent ready and was checking out the wreckage when he realized it was hidden by magic. This spell was the only reason they didn't spot the spiders creeping nearby, and once the knights finally woke up, everyone headed to the tent to talk, where Diana introduced her warriors Camille and Daniela and checked on the guys, who said they were feeling totally fine. The princess introduces Emma Granger as her maid, and the girl stands up to thank the heroes for coming to the rescue. Next up is Pal, or Pascal von Barschmud, a count who totally doesn't look like royalty, but Diana says he's the one person she trusts more than anyone. Willie knew right away this guy was a Barschmud because he'd heard Pal was a top-tier knight, and the Count already realized he was face-to-face with the legendary Scarlet Mage. Pal had a hunch since he saw Willie's hair, but seeing the House Abel crest confirmed everything, and the princess was totally shocked her heroes were from that family. The wizard apologized for being rude. Then Willie revealed he's the 3rd vice-commander of Mungesta's magic squad, and Siegbert introduced himself right after. Diana whispered his name to herself, and that was the end of their short meeting. The magician asked how they even got into the dungeon, but the guys had no idea since their teleport stone broke and out of nowhere, they're getting wrapped up in cocoons. Zig sees that their new friends are stuck in the exact same mess. Pal warns that if the princess just vanishes, the whole kingdom. He said their main job was to get the princess back to the surface safely. But that's going to be a total nightmare without any real training or experts on the team. The Count turned to Willy and asked the legendary House of Able Magician to back them up with his insane power. Zig told his uncle that these new guys wanted the exact same thing, so teaming up would make their escape way easier. And his uncle just laughed because he totally knew the kid was going to say that. He was totally down to help the kid, but he had to set some ground rules first. He pulled out a dark magic oath scroll to make it official. All Willy wanted was for everyone to keep their... Camille was totally against it because the oath scroll is the one contract you can never break, and if you mess up, they can hit you with any insane punishment they want. The knight warned him that this contract could literally kill him, shouting about how terrifying it was, and since Zig had no clue, he was totally losing his mind. Camille warned that the scroll would put the princess in total danger, and while Willy got why he was so mad, they had to follow the magician's rules or they'd get zero help. This guy was ready to crush anyone to keep Siegbert a secret, and the princess told him she totally got where he was coming from. The girl asked if Zig was the greatest talent of his generation, but the magician looked so stunned that it was obvious he didn't have a clue. Uncle knew this was the perfect chance to remind Zig he wasn't just some normal kid, but a super important part of the Able family. Our hero realized right away that this guy wasn't just talking about his skills. There was something else hidden deep inside him. Still, he was totally lost on what Willy was actually trying to... He asked the princess if she had any secrets they needed to hide. The boy was just about to sign the oath scroll himself, but the magician yelled out that there was totally no need for him to... I'd step up, they'd never be part of the squad. Let's go with... The guy wasn't about to let them dodge the blame, because if they didn't, Diana was totally moved by his honest words. So she finally dropped her robe to reveal her secret beast form and begged him not to tell anyone about her hidden ears. Camille and Daniel were totally blown away. The magician asked if she was born with those ears. The princess said yeah, she definitely was. She explained that those ears show up when different bloodlines mix. This was actually a huge problem since the Beastman was a royal, and Sieg realized that even in this world, people were still super judgmental. She normally uses a magic tool to hide her ears, but it got wrecked during the spider attack, and she's terrified people will find out a half-breed is actually in charge. Diana told everyone to keep their mouths shut about her secret until she was ready, and when she asked them to sign a contract, Zig agreed instantly and asked his uncle if he was on board too. The magician was clearly hating this and asked if the hero would actually keep his word, but Zig promised he'd never do anything to upset the lady. The man sighed since the kid was still way too kind, so Mark actually swapped the death penalty for a memory wipe, and the princess thanked Zig for the help. She slams the contract onto the table for everyone to sign, and suddenly, the scroll snaps shut and flies into the air. It starts glowing and splits into pieces, with every part melting right. Now they're both stuck keeping each other's secrets, and Camille is totally salty, complaining he'd never have signed that deal if you were actually a princess, while Pal just asks the maid. The guy flashed a grin and agreed. So since the boys were down with the deal, Willy promised to lead them out of the dungeon, shaking the big man's hand while the Count told. Zig walked up to the princess and promised they'd both make it out of there in one piece. As the hero and princess shook hands, the magician watched them and realized he had to play the bad guy to keep Zig safe from a fake friend, especially since that magic stone he found revealed someone purposely set up a barrier to leave the princess totally helpless. Willy was totally sure there was a traitor hiding in the group, but he still had no idea who it actually was. Willy knew this mess was a total headache, but since Sieg could finally hold his own in a fight, he decided to handle the Estonia investigation himself just as another important detail popped into his head. The second Siegfeld opened his eyes, his uncle was already right there to say good morning. The hero asks Willy who he's talking to, but Willy just says it's nobody and claims he's only watching over his nephew Zig, who completely forgot he was supposed to be guarding the tent. The guys were totally wiped out, so our hero let them crash while he and his uncle stayed up to keep watch. The kid hung his head and asked when he'd even fallen asleep, but his uncle just asked if he really thought he was ready to stand guard while everyone else was out cold. He laughs and asks if he's down for an adventure with Theo, but the nephew says he needs to get way stronger first. His uncle was totally right. He's obsessed with becoming an adventurer, and nothing gets his heart racing like hunting monsters with Theo and the crew. Willy teased his nephew for being embarrassed, joking that he looked like a grown-up but still had a baby face. And just as the hero begged them not to laugh, Emma burst in to announce that breakfast was served. The table was stacked with a fancy, mouth-watering breakfast that looked absolutely insane. Diana was totally hyped watching them put that sandwich together. Willibald pointed out they were super lucky that the monsters here were actually edible, and since it wasn't just gross coal spiders, Pascal agreed they wouldn't have to worry about going hungry. Willie and his nephew hooked them up with a tent and kept watch, so the Count offered to pay them back with a meal, and Emma even threw in some canned goods to whip up a delicious thank you feast. Seedbelt handed the princess the plate and told her she could have his half if she liked them, while Diana, totally glued to the sandwiches, asked if her hunger was really that obvious. The princess's tail shot straight up, and when the hero told her it was totally giving her away, Diana started to panic. The princess hugged her tail and asked Zig if he thought she was gross, but he just smiled and told her there was no way, since it actually looked great on her. Camille suddenly snapped and started screaming at Zig for saying Diana's demon form actually suited her, and after getting scolded for insulting the princess, a terrified Zig scrambled to explain that Camille totally lost it, screaming about how he dared to mess with their princess and not caring one bit that Sieg was just a kid. Willie jumped in with a smirk, asking Camille who he thinks kept him alive and fed, basically telling him to stay out of the kid's business until Camille finally got the hint and apologized. The princess chills Camille out, telling her she's just happy someone likes her look, while Daniela jumps in to ask what the game plan is for their next move. She learned the quickest way out was to slay the boss. So Willibald used his search magic and found the beast waiting on the 25th floor, just 2 levels down from where the boss is probably the king of the Red Blade. And even with a ton of monsters waiting for them, they'll be totally fine as long as they work together to crush those weaklings. Camille asks Willie if he can count the enemies from here, and the magician says he's got the numbers, but he has no clue what kind of terrain they're walking into. Pascal said they were good to go, knowing Willie could easily sniff out any enemies waiting for them, and Sieg was honestly just blown away by how awesome his uncle was. If he ever gets as strong as his uncle, he'll be able to pull off the same moves, but he's actually looking to learn way more than just magic. After they finished eating, the Count said it was time to get ready, and when he asked Diana if she was cool with that, she told him to do whatever he thought was best and thanked her uncle and nephew for having her back. Zig politely said it wasn't worth the trouble, but Camille got super annoyed and complained that geniuses are everywhere, and Daniela could totally feel the bad vibes. Camille was totally stunned when Daniela told him she'd caught the magician secretly talking to someone about the magic stone fragments earlier that morning. She figured flying was the only thing that saved them from the dungeon, and Camille was totally losing it because that mage almost got them locked up. He was about to go warn everyone else, but Daniela stepped in and told him he needed to take a seat. She warned them to play it cool because if Willie realized they knew the truth, he'd end them right there, and the knights knew they were totally outmatched by his magic. He was fuming because he felt totally useless. Camille muttered that they needed a way better plan, and then the girl asked if her friend's brother was actually some legendary knight. Camille said he spent his whole life stuck in the shadow of his superstar relative, who was so perfect that everyone just completely ignored him. Camille thought becoming a knight would finally change how people saw him, but he was still miles behind the older one and nothing changed. To win over the naive guy, Daniela claimed she was the one who recommended him to guard the princess, which totally stunned Camille while he was stuck on his leash. She knew this guy was the perfect pick for the mission since he was strong enough to keep the princess totally safe. Camille was literally crying as he thanked Daniela, but she told him to dry his eyes because they were totally going to get through this together. Daniela promised they could crush the Scarlet Mage together, giving him the guts he needed to finally protect his princess with everything he had. The next day, the crew hit the 24th floor right at lunchtime and ran into a herd of cows, so Zig used his magic and strength to take them out and whip up some fresh steaks. Pal was super impressed by the kid's crazy magic and how he could solo a whole pack of monsters, making Camille wonder if Sieg was even a normal child. But Willie just said he's still got a long way to go since he hasn't even hit his limit yet. Everything finally clicked for the Count, from the mage's weird contract to the secret of that glowing stone, because the kid standing right in front of him was anything but ordinary. The gang finds Zig already loaded up with loot and meat, and he tells them they're gonna eat like kings. Though Camille is still totally freaked out that bodies vanish in this dungeon while the meat just stays behind. Willie explains that the dungeon literally eats the bodies for fuel, and even though the corpses vanish right away, all the valuable loot stays behind. Adventurers grab all the loot left on the ground, but Camille was totally confused why these monsters were dropping actual meal. The magician didn't have an answer, so he joked that the dungeon was just some ancient farm, but the knight screamed that it was way too creepy to be a normal field. Zig was right in the middle of handing out supplies when he noticed the princess looking totally freaked out with her ears twitching. So he walked up and told her she had nothing to worry about. She was totally ready to deny everything, but one look at her tail told her she was busted. So she just hugged it and grumbled about it, always snitching on her while Zig stood there feeling super awkward and apologizing. Emma turns to the guy and asks if he's scared of fighting monsters, and he admits he's actually terrified, but his drive to get stronger keeps him moving forward. He clenched his fist and swore he'd keep fighting because he had to protect the people he cared about. The princess gave him major props for being so brave, but Zig just played it cool and told her he was already itching to see more of the world. He nervously explained that just like the princess, he shaves monsters for a living, but he's actually dying to explore the world and totally loves to win. Zig hated the idea of being stuck at home because he didn't want to waste his life inside four walls. And even though Diana was sad, she told him she totally got it. She told him she was basically stuck in the palace 24/7, and even though the servants did everything for her, seeing kids playing in the streets made her feel super jealous, which really got. Zig told the princess they were hanging out today and showed her how the dungeon actually looked pretty chill now that the monsters were totally miserable. Zig started eyeing the fruit trees and the fountain up ahead, asking Diana if she wanted to see them for herself. And once she said she was down, he grabbed her hand and pulled her along for a walk. He swore he'd keep her safe if those monsters showed up, and Diana was totally down with that. Camille saw the guy taking the princess and wanted to jump in, but Willie told him to relax since there weren't any monsters around, while Pal said to just let Diana and Zig do their thing and asked Emma to hang back with the boys. The Count was hyped to see the princess finally chilling and actually having a good time. He was stoked that the hero and Her Majesty were becoming such good friends. The magician just laughed and said their walk was seriously awesome and packed with cool stuff. They snacked on magic fruit that literally glowed like the stars inside. The boys passed a pond and found an animal just hanging out in the water. But the trip wasn't all fun and games. This little monster tried to ambush them from the bushes, but Pal swooped in at the last second to save everyone. After that, they grabbed The guys kept pushing deeper and deeper into the woods until they finally hit the bottom floor and found a massive door. Willie told them the dungeon boss was right behind it, and Camille was all ready. He told them to just charge in and take the guy down so they could finally escape, but the mage asked why he was in such a rush, warning him that the boss Biranga was. The guy tells them to crash for the night and hit the monster's lair tomorrow, but he warns Zig to get some rest, and that's when Zig realizes his uncle is totally. Willie warned them to stay sharp on their last night in the dungeon, and that's when the princess realized she might never see her new friend again. Once the magic tent was up and the crew settled in, Diana walked over to Zig and told him she needed to talk to him one-on-one. Seeing how shocked he is, the princess tells him Pal and Emma already gave her the green light, promising it'll be super quick and they'll stay right near the camp. Zig was right on the verge of saying yes when he caught sight of Willie. He turned to his uncle and asked if he could go talk to the princess for a second. But the guy totally shut him. The princess hung her head and ears in sadness, saying they might never meet again, and Willie just nodded because he totally understood. He let them head out, but first he slapped an ice cage and a tracking spell on them so he could swoop in if they got into trouble, and the boys were actually super grateful for the backup. Zig told them to follow his lead. While he was out looking for food, he'd found this gorgeous spot he really wanted to show the princess. She was totally down for the adventure. He finally knew the kid could handle himself, so he stopped stressing and watched the Count and Emma cook while the knights kept giving the Scarlet Mage some major side-eye. Willie had to hunt down the traitor before the enemy made their move, and just then, Camille caught Daniela holding a super weird magic item and asked her what she was up to. She snapped the map shut and explained it's actually a tracker that spies on Diana's every move and how she's doing. He asked why she even needed that tool, but Danielle said it was perfect for trapping the magician, so she tossed it to him and told him to wait for her signal. She reminded Camille he was doing this just to keep the plan safe, and the knight promised he'd totally bring her back home. She warned him they only had one shot, so he better listen close if they were going to take down the Scarlet Mage. The princess and the hero finally stepped out into the open. Zig helped her up the stairs. Right in front of them was a clear sky with 2 glowing moons. Diana couldn't. The guy used his magic to make the spot way more cozy so they could chill. He used sand to build 2 massive, soft-looking mounds. The princess was totally confused and asked what he was. The kid plopped down on the beanbags to get comfy. Diana got so relaxed that she totally forgot she had to talk to Zig. He had to give her a little nudge to remind. The princess wanted to give him a proper thank you and told him that if he ever needs a favor, she's totally got his back. Our guy felt totally awkward and knew he was still just a kid, but he was learning fast and getting way stronger every single day. Suddenly, he flashes back to his uncle's voice, remembering how the man said Zig was the most special person in the whole family. The hero asks the princess what she knows about the gems, but she just says sorry and admits she's got no clue. She explained that the Abel family basically built the whole kingdom from scratch to earn their marquee title, and since they're related to the first king's second son, they're actually considered the second royal family. He started remembering his uncle's old warnings, but then Diana dropped the news that there was even more to it. The Abel family had been guarding their secret treasure for hundreds of years. Sieg had zero clue it even existed and had never heard a single word about it. The girl explained that the gems were actually... That's the only info the royals and world leaders were ever given. The Abel family will absolutely wreck anyone who touches their treasures. Nobody even suspects how much hidden power the people they... Right then, Zig finally realized he was a huge deal to his family as the princess finished her story. That was all she knew, but she was sure he'd find out the whole truth eventually, and the hero felt bad for even asking her. Diana just smiled and told him he didn't need to apologize since they were both dying to uncover the truth about their destiny. Zig realized they were actually a lot alike, and after thinking it over, she told him to just call her Dia. Zig tried his best, but he kept calling her mistress out of habit, and even after Diana corrected him, he just couldn't get it right. He finally asked why she told him straight up that she just wanted to be friends with Zig. Even if they never met in person, she wanted to stand right there as his equal. Because of Zig, she confessed that her time with Zig was honestly the best, because once she heads back, she's just a regular princess again. And she knows she'll never get to have this much fun ever. She just wanted him to treat her like a regular person, no matter how big of a deal she actually was. She wasn't trying to pull anything and just wanted them to be friends in their final moments, so he smiled back and simply called her Dia, totally getting how she felt. Zig told her he just wanted to be friends since they're the same age. Plus, he loved watching her tail wiggle with her emotions, making the blushing princess grab her tail and beg him to stop talking. The guy told them they should keep writing letters even after the journey ends, because he's totally sure they'll meet up again one day. The princess was so happy to hear that, so she gave the hero a massive smile and promised they'd definitely meet again. Zig was totally blown away by how pretty the princess was, and he could already tell Diana was going to be a total stunner when she grew up. While that's going down, the magician uses a magic map to spy on everyone, seeing Zig and Diana keeping their distance while the Count and Emma stay hidden in their tents. He spotted the knights and realized they weren't even trying to hide their betrayal anymore, probably using some magic tool to stay completely off the radar. Just then, a magic ball dropped right next to him and started smoking. But Willie stayed totally chill because he knew the traitors were finally making their move. And a quick look at his map showed that Zig was nowhere to be found. He realized someone was lugging the kid right toward him, and as they got closer, the magician scanned the area until he spotted a dark shadow moving through the thick smoke. He chucked blades to stop him, but they just pinged off an invisible shield around Camille, leaving Willie totally lost on how the ice cage broke or where Daniel even went. Morning finally rolled around, and while the man didn't care which traitor showed up first, he wasn't letting anyone touch Sieg as Willie trailed right behind the traitor. He burst into the room Camille went into and saw a boy lying on the floor with his back turned, so he rushed over and grabbed Zig to see if he was okay. It was just a doll, and Willie realized right then that he'd been totally set up. He saw a timer ticking on its head and chucked it away, but he couldn't. Camille was standing right there, and seeing the room totally trashed along with the magician, he was just hyped that he actually took Willie down. He was so hyped he didn't even see Danielle sneak up and drive her sword right through him, and as he hit the ground screaming, she couldn't believe Camille was actually dumb enough to. Danielle was actually hyped to find such a clueless knight she could use, because any other guard would have seen right through her obvious lies. Blood was literally everywhere, and Camille used his last bit of strength to whisper that he couldn't believe Danielle was actually a traitor. But she just told him one more time that every single thing she said before was a total lie. Danielle had no clue why she was supposed to recommend Camille as a nightlight to the princess, and she even admitted she was rooting for the monsters to kill everyone, but her plan totally flaws. She bragged that her boss gave her a totally broken magic tool, claiming even a loser like Camille could use it to crush the legendary Scarlet Maid. Now she just had to deal with the kids and get through one night. She thought that would be the easiest part of her whole plan. After that, no one would ever bother her again. Danielle felt bad because the kid could have been an awesome knight, but he just wasn't smart enough to stay alive, and now the dungeon is going to erase every trace of him forever. Daniela told Camille that nobody was even looking at him anyway, so no one would miss him, and then she just walked away and left him there to die. A massive noise suddenly cut the princess and hero off, so they rushed back to their squad totally clueless about what just went down. They rounded the corner to find the boss room wide open, and Emma and Pal immediately sprinted to Diana and Zig to check if they were still in one piece. The princess asks the count what's happening, but he's totally clueless, saying they were just hanging out in the tent until they heard the sounds of battle and rushed out to see the mess. Emma said they were totally trapped by a weird barrier, but Pal used his raw strength to smash them out, and the second they stepped outside, the sound just stopped. The magic dome protecting the princess and the boy just totally shattered. Uncle's spell crumbled into a million pieces, and Zig knew right away that something bad happened to Willie. Daniela bursts out of the boss's room screaming for the princess and the count, and when Diana sees the blood everywhere and asks what's going on, the girl tells her they were just attacked. She figured this was the person who warped them into the dungeon, and the count was totally shocked. Daniela yelled that the criminal slipped behind the boss's door where Camille and Wilbald were already waiting, so they had to go help the boys, and the man was totally down for it. The girl told Diana to stay close since that criminal might have backup nearby, and Siege even promised he'd personally keep the princess safe. The squad pushed through the boss's door into a massive hall with light leaking through the cracks, only to find the monster on its knees praying. The princess immediately realized he was the king of the Red Blade. Sieg couldn't find Camille or his uncle anywhere, so he asked the knight what happened to them. She didn't. She let her hair down and mocked them for being so trusting, right as the door slammed shut and dark branches blocked the only way out. Danielle's armor swapped for pitch-black robes as her eyes went totally cold, and as creepy black liquid flooded the floor, monsters started crawling out while she promised the heroes they were all gonna... The Count finally realized Daniela was behind the whole mess, and she didn't even try to hide it, telling him it was way too late to stop her now that the Scarlet Mage and Camille were dead. Zig freaks out saying there's no way, but Danielle doesn't care if he believes her since they'd be here already if they were alive, and then she hurls a sharp splinter straight at the monster. This girl thought a basic boss fight was way too boring, so she decided to give him a massive power-up. She really wanted Princess Diana to go down in the most painful way possible. Daniela really wanted Madame Diana to go out in the most painful way possible. The uncle was totally confused about what this girl just pulled off. Zig triggered his special skill, Appraising Glance, to see exactly what he was dealing with. He realized this girl used a spell to wake the boss, and now its power level is totally glitched and changing every second, making it impossible to predict. Our guy finally realized that the monster's biggest weakness was actually lightning. She was getting super annoyed and worried because the guys were just standing there totally frozen. She pointed those massive monsters right at her teammates, making the giant charge toward them at full speed. The guy moved in a total flash, throwing up a massive shield that saved him and his squad from that killer attack. Daniela told everyone to just chill and wait for the princess to die, promising that they'd all be joining her soon after. The uncle begged Mr. Gilbert to grab the princess and run for it, and when the boy tried to argue, the man warned him that staying meant they were all dead meat. He grabbed her hand, knowing they had to get to safety right now, and after a quick look around, he spotted a nearby door that was their perfect way out. Out of nowhere, the monster jumped them from behind, and Uncle's heart dropped as he panicked about the kids being in danger. Zig reacted fast, popping a glowing light shield that kept both him and the girl totally safe. He charged straight in and sparked his sharpest light blade, landing massive hits to take the monster down and keep his friends safe. The kids are scrambling for their lives, barely dodging the monster's brutal strikes as it zips around with crazy, unpredictable speed. One line out. The input was one paragraph. I will provide one sentence/line. Suddenly, it hit him. They were never getting away unless they actually fought the king. The only way to win is to smash that magic stone Danielle shoved deep inside the beast. But it's not that easy because the stone is covered in a ton of shields, so there was just one huge problem. Sieg didn't have the lightning magic needed to bust through that barrier and crush the magic stone inside the monster. Siege can't use the magic the king is weak to, so he's gonna blast the barrier with his ultimate move, but there's only a tiny 20% chance it'll actually break through. To make things worse, Zig's body can only handle one big spell, so betting everything on a single shot is a massive risk. He used his head and realized that trying to take down a monster this strong with basic magic was a total waste of time. Zig kept holding that barrier up with everything he had, but he knew they were dead meat if he didn't make a big move right now. Diana sneaks over to the guy and drops a crazy plan. She'll be the bait to distract the monster while the others sneak up and finish it off. She can't fight at all, but with this guy protecting her, she might actually make it out of the barrier. Daniela really needs her, so moving her is going to grab the attention of... She told everyone to just bolt if she went down, but Zig thought that was way too risky, and the princess begged the guys to do whatever they could to keep as many people alive as possible. She was totally ready to risk her life for the mission, knowing that every single second was way too precious to waste. She really didn't want anyone else to get hurt, and after seeing how serious she was, the guy decided to go all in on her wild plan. But they'll only go if they escape as a team, sticking side by side and watching each other's backs just to stay alive. The kid moves fast, slicing the monster's arm clean off and giving his team a chance to regroup while the beast backs away. Zig didn't care how scary things got. He's finally strong enough to keep his word and protect his friend from any crazy danger that comes their way. Our hero realized there was no way he just stumbled into this dungeon by accident. This had to be fate. He saw that the monster's only weakness was lightning magic, which sucked because he was ready to flip this loss into a win, stay hyped, and walk out of this fight as the ultimate champion no matter what stood in his way. All he cared about was keeping his friends safe, so he whipped out his special flaming spear and got ready to take down the enemy to save the day. Taking down this monster is their big ticket out of here, and since that magic stone is so close, the guys finally have a real shot at being free. The kid was totally freaked out to see the king's arms grow right back after he'd chopped them off, and the boss didn't waste a second before launching a massive attack that put him in serious danger. The uncle and princess were totally panicked, watching that massive beast charge straight at Siegbert. The girl was completely frozen in shock, but then Danielle suddenly appeared right behind her and totally freaked her out. Everything around it was getting totally wrecked, but that magic stone somehow didn't have a single scratch on it. This insane light shield saved the kid's life, letting him tank the hit and walk away without any major damage. He used every last bit of energy he had left just to keep from passing out. He knew his friends were totally cooked if he didn't make it back to help them, so he bawled his... Out of nowhere, a mysterious voice shouts that the first person to find it is a rare gem, and that's when Zig slowly opens his eyes. A tiny butterfly lands right on the boy's nose, giving everyone a sudden spark of hope in the middle of all that tension. He stared at the tiny creature in total confusion, wondering how it even got there, until a voice told him he wasn't ready for direct messages yet, so they had to use this butterfly to talk to him. He figured out the butterfly wasn't actually the one talking, but some invisible person was using the tiny bug to speak to him. Suddenly, a massive glowing sword appeared right in front of him, looking totally epic and pulsing with an insane amount of power. He remembered hearing that world-changing loot was hidden deep in dungeons, and Siege wondered if this new sword was actually one of those legendary treasures. The voice warned that his weak body might literally snap under all that pressure. Every second he waited, his squad's chances of survival were dropping to 0. He just had to find his strength. He knew exactly what he was getting into and was ready to take the hit, because his friends' lives mattered way more to him than his own. If there's even a tiny shot at winning, Siegbert is taking it, so he's grabbing this massive sword to fight for his life and freedom. The voice saw the kid get back up and told him he wasn't quite a gem yet, but since he had potential, it turned into a weapon to help him show everyone what he could really do. The shield shattered and left the princess wide open, and Diana realized that with the enemies moving this fast, her whole team was about to get wiped out. The blast slammed into the princess's shield and totally wrecked it, giving Danielle the big win she wanted. She was sick of these weak humans fighting back, so she forced the girl to look her in. She was just about to start torturing the girl when a massive explosion suddenly rocked the room, stopping her in her tracks and leaving everyone totally confused. Both girls whipped their heads toward the blast and saw a massive glowing sword sucking up magic like a hungry beast getting ready for the next fight. The guy behind all the madness was actually Zig, and he was clutching a sword that pulls in magic, looking totally ready for the final showdown. The girl looked at him with total worry, while Daniela's jaw dropped when she saw that massive sword shrink into a tiny rapier, wondering how the heck he was even still standing after all that. She was totally losing it because her plan was failing, screaming at Seedbert to stop fighting and just die already. He pops his hurricane skill and lands a super fast hit on the boss, leaving Daniela totally blown away. He realized something crazy. Even though his magic was totally drained, he didn't feel tired at all because the sword was doing all the heavy lifting for him. Feeling totally unstoppable with his new gear, Zig jumped into the fight and started using every trick his weapon had to crush the enemy. He flipped midair and blasted a massive stream of fire straight down, smashing the magic stone with insane force to finally end the duel and grab the win. The magic stone shattered into a million pieces, clearing the path to victory, and now the whole future is in our hero's hands as he gets ready to finish this fight and save his friends for good. The second Zig hit the ground, he felt a huge wave of relief seeing Diana sprint over with a massive smile, and he was just hyped that he actually pulled off the mission and kept the princess safe like a boss. Danielle was absolutely fuming after losing and stormed right up to the couple, looking like she was about to explode. She was totally fuming and couldn't figure out why her magic gear was failing instead of giving her the easy win she expected. It felt like nobody could ever be good enough for this girl, leaving her totally fed up and annoyed with everyone around her. She completely snapped and screamed that she'd give up her own life just to take everyone out, hacking and smashing them into tiny bloody pieces until every single enemy was dead. Out of nowhere, someone landed a perfect hit and knocked the weapon right out of Daniela's hands while she was totally losing. She lost her footing and slammed into the ground, dropping her weapon and leaving her completely unable to keep fighting. She looked up totally confused about what was stopping her, but then the wall suddenly blew apart and two dark figures came charging right through the hole. One of the guys storms in and screams at her, asking why she just started a total bloodbath in a chill dungeon and put everyone else in danger. He marched right up to her with someone slung over his shoulder, looking totally ready to end this chaos no matter what happened next. The woman panicked as the last will ball closed in, screaming to know what she did to his nephew and if she was ready to pay for all the lives she wrecked. It was actually the Scarlet Mage. The kid looked up at his uncle, totally trusting him to make everything okay. The Master Mage Willbald locked in and blasted a massive beam of magic straight at the boys. He also sent something flying their way in a total flash. It was Camille, who's now a total traitor. But his uncle still patched him up because he knew Camille's sensitive heart couldn't handle the mental toll of dying. He looked at his partner and asked if the guy in his arms was also a traitor. Even though she was feeling totally crushed, Danielle forced herself to lock in once she saw her rival was actually in bad shape. If she puts everything she's got into this next hit, her opponent is getting totally wrecked with zero chance of survival. The enemy realized things just got dangerous and jumped straight into the attack. He started throwing heavy hits to shut down Danielle's wild attacks and take back control of the fight. She realized her opponent was way too strong and fighting back was a total death wish, so she made the split-second choice to bolt and save her life. Willbald slammed down a massive magic barrier to trap Danielle, yelling that she wasn't getting away after trying to kill his nephew Sieg and using that backstabbing puppet to take him out too. This mage started flexing, claiming that no magic weapon in the world, not even the ones from his own home, was strong enough to kill him. Daniela shouted in total shock, demanding to know if that creepy dungeon monster was actually just a robot sent from the kingdom of Willbald. He confirmed she was totally right because the gear clearly had their kingdom's official seal on it, but it was super sketchy since she's a traitor from Estonia and nobody knew how she even got her. She was totally second-guessing everything, but he shut her down fast, saying there was no point in talking since she didn't have the info he needed and he'd just figure out the criminal. He was done listening to her annoying excuses, so he decided to skip the talk and just rip the secret straight out of her mind. Daniela didn't hesitate and triggered the hidden device, setting off a massive explosion to cause total chaos so she could make a quick getaway. Willbald finally figured it out. She used the portal that spawns after the boss fight to warp straight back to the surface. Daniela screamed that she'd never forget this total embarrassment and swore to get them back 100 times worse, even though her uncle tried his best to hold her back. The Scarlet Mage realized she used a teleportation stone to warp right out of that ice prison, and he totally would have caught her if he hadn't panicked. Uncle realized he let the hype get to his head, making him lose focus and act totally reckless. The kid saw his uncle show up, Danilella bolted, and now everything's finally going to be okay. Diana asked if he was doing okay, and the guy next to him just gave him a pat on the head. Willbald told everyone his nephew was totally fine and had just pushed himself way too hard with his magic because he's such a dedicated worker. The princess was super grateful for the rescue, but the Scarlet Mage just shook it off, saying he was basically useless and didn't do a thing. He let out a massive sigh, totally kicking himself for being late yet again. She watched him super closely, her heart racing with pure nerves. He told them to stop stressing for nothing and take him to the count right now. He let them know the rest of the team was badly hurt and needed backup fast. Once everyone's patched up, he said this was the perfect chance for Zig to kick back and get his strength back. Suddenly, he hears a super warm voice calling his name, and he slowly blinks his eyes open. It was actually his mom, and she was looking at him with the kindest, most loving smile you've ever seen. Lyra looked at her son and realized he was growing up way too fast, remembering when he was just a tiny baby, and she was so proud to see him becoming such a strong and healthy kid. She looked at him with total regret and said she hated dragging him there. But then she explained it was the only way they could finally talk about the serious stuff without anyone else around. Lyra lets him know this is the last time they'll ever see each other, and he totally breaks down, hugging his mom tight while feeling the crushing weight of their final goodbye. Siegbert squeezed his mom tight, feeling totally crushed that he was too weak to see the truth, and he begged for her forgiveness for missing the warning signs and letting this nightmare happen. She told him it wasn't his fault, explaining that her curse was way too powerful for even his special skills to stop, and there was just no way for him to change fate. He stared at his mom in total shock, trying to process what he just heard, but she told him she had some major news to drop. They were trusted with this legendary treasure. It kept the mom safe until her son was finally born. Now all that insane power is being passed down to protect the young heir. This massive treasure belongs to the mom actually didn't want her son stuck with this massive family burden, but fate had other plans and forced her to hand over the legendary treasure anyway. Zig leaned in close to his mom and nervously asked her what the Abel family treasure was supposed to be. She looked her son dead in the eye and told him that to understand their family treasure, he first had to learn the truth about God. This whole world was built by a god from the divine kingdom who totally loved his creation. But things got crazy when the other gods started fighting over who should be king, so to keep everyone safe, the creator stashed pieces of his soul deep inside the dungeons. He handed the most valuable part to a few chosen people he really believed in. Only one special person is strong enough to guard the core of E. Nobody knows what happened to the creator himself, but his mom's story finally made the boy realize why the Abel family was the one guarding that insane treasure. But it looks like someone actually caught on to this massive secret. Lyra had no clue who figured out the treasure's secret, but now that she's holding all that power, every hunter out there is coming for her. His mom couldn't stop stressing about her son having to carry the massive weight of being the guardian. The kid stared at her, looking totally worried about what was going on. Zig hopped off his mom's lap and told her she was seriously the best, because even though she's gone, she's still working hard to keep everyone safe. So he told her she could finally just relax. No matter how crazy things got, he was ready to crush every obstacle using the insane power he got from his ancestors, and he knew he'd survive whatever came his way. He knew his squad was right there, ready to jump in and back him up at any second. He made it clear he wasn't going to carry this massive weight all by himself. He'd finally found a crew of loyal friends and a family he could actually trust. Zig's got so many people he cares about in this world, and he's going all out to protect them with everything he's got. Zig was finally ready to step up and claim the legendary treasure of the Abel family. He promised his mom that once the fighting was done, he'd start a whole new life, finally being free and happy with the people he loves most. She completely lost it and burst into tears, pulling her son into a massive hug. She was so hyped to see him finally get strong enough to handle the crazy stuff coming his way. But his mom warned him not to get totally obsessed with his mission and wreck his own life. She told Lyra's biggest dream was for her son to finally get his happy ending. The boy swore he'd live his best life, basically finishing the journey she never got to. The wish granter announced that their time was finally up and she had to head back home. She gave the wish granter a huge thanks, feeling super hyped that her selfish little dream actually came true. Lyra hated saying goodbye to her son and desperately wanted to stay, but the strict rules of the afterlife forced her to leave him behind. His mom comforted him, promising she'd always be watching over him and having his back even if he couldn't see her. Zig couldn't hold it back anymore and just broke down crying as the pain of losing his mom hit him all over again, tears streaming down his face because of how lonely he felt. She whispered that she'd always be right there, invisible but giving them the strength to keep going when things get rough. The guy looked up at the sky and screamed for his mom as tears poured down his face. He was totally crushed by the loss and just wanted to hear her voice one more time. He wakes up to see a glowing white butterfly right in front of him, and its shimmering wings make him think of his mom's final words as it circles around like she's still there watching. Haku let out a happy shout and rushed over for a huge hug, his eyes sparkling with pure excitement because he was just so hyped to see his best friend finally awake and okay. He heard his dad and Theo calling his name, so he turned around to see them. Theo looked totally stressed and asked if he was doing okay after that crazy situation. You could see it in his. Zig flashed a massive grin and shouted that he felt awesome, telling everyone about the super vivid and cozy dream he just had. He asked his brother if they were really back on the surface, and Theo confirmed that Will led them the right way and they just made it out in one piece. The older brother said the Princess of Estonia was hidden away safely, but things were still super intense with knights guarding her 24/7. And then the younger brother explained exactly how things got this bad. His dad revealed that a rebellion had broken out in Estonia, and with Princess Diana accused of treason and sentenced to hang, Sieg was left completely frozen in shock. Right near the dungeon in Koan City, the brother found a hotel and apologized to the owner for showing up out of the blue with his whole group. He told the owner they had to evacuate right now, and as a member of the Abel family, he offered to pay for 3 whole months just to rent out the entire hotel for 3 days. Thiel tells the owner they're moving the house for a bit, and the Abel family is paying for everything. But since it's a huge state secret, he needs to act like he never saw or heard a single thing. The Scarlet Mage cast a spell to seal the doors and told his dad that no one could eavesdrop, making the old man really proud of his work. The guy apologized to Princess Diana and Count Balschmidt for the late intro, then revealed he's actually Gilbert von Abel, the commander of the Kingdom of Majesta's First Order of Knights. He listened to their wild story and was just stoked they were still breathing. So Diana thanked him and explained that Sieg and Wilbald were the ones who actually saved their skins. Count Balschmidt was losing his mind over the news of a rebellion, wondering how it was even possible for the princess to be the one leading the whole thing. The commander says the rebellion is basically over, but the traitors are still trying to lock up Princess Diana, and they've already smashed their way into the capital. She looked straight at the commander and asked how many people were hurt, her heart racing with fear for all the innocent people caught in the middle of the fight. He quickly told her not to worry since the damage was super small and basically everyone was safe. Gilbert drops the news that Prince Tobias is framing the princess for a rebellion and has put a massive bounty on her head, telling every country he wants her caught dead or alive. She let out a heavy sigh thinking about her big brother Tobias, feeling totally crushed and let down by what he'd done. Count Balschmidt wasn't buying it, since there's no way the princess could lead a whole rebellion from inside a dungeon cell. Zig listened to the whole story and realized there was no way Diana would ever do something that extreme. The boy yelled at his dad that his friend literally put her life on the line as a decoy to save everyone. She was only thinking about her people and how to keep them safe. Someone that selfless. His brother's report made it official. The enemies were definitely hunting them down, and the leader's worst fears were finally coming true. The kid finally realized his uncle had been talking to the family the whole time, while Gilbert kept explaining that Prince Tobias had zero proof Princess Diana was actually part of the rebellion. He was acting way too sus, and it definitely looked like some dirty political games were going down. The Scarlet Mage just laughed and called the whole thing a joke, pointing out that it looked like the big brother was actually trying to get rid of his little sister, which totally shocked and creeped out the teens watching. He already knew the prince was a total nightmare, so this news wasn't a shock at all. The rules for who takes the throne are the real reason he's being so mean to his sister. Gilbert told his brother to stop being so negative around the princess so he wouldn't upset her, and the magician actually apologized for what he said. She just wanted the fighting to stop and couldn't believe her brother would actually do this, but then the group started closing in on her. The commander stepped up and told everyone they were going to protect the princess at all costs. Wilbold asked his brother if he was actually sure about his choice. He reminded him that even if she's innocent, the princess still belongs to another kingdom. If anyone finds out the guy got super fired up, shouting that he'd never be able to sleep again if he was the one who sent a totally innocent little girl to be hanged. Wilbald confessed he'd totally back his brother up, and deep down, he really wanted to keep the princess safe anyway. They're actually digging into a mysterious case tied to the Kingdom of Estonia, and if they can get the Count and Princess to help out, they'll have a way better shot. He said that if he sent Zig's best friend to his death, his uncle would get revenge by making him lose someone he really loved. He thanked his uncle and dad like crazy, his eyes totally lit up with pure gratitude. The Count thanked the family for taking such good care of him, promising he'd never forget it, and the girl beside him gave a sweet smile that made the whole moment feel super wholesome. The uncle asks the princess if he can borrow her magic disguise gadget for a quick minute. He mentioned a legendary magic mechanic in Koan City who needs to fix the princess's device so she can stay hidden and safe on her journey. The Scarlet Mage told his brother to grab the master's tool, but he said no because he had to report back to the bosses first. He knew the higher-ups wouldn't make a quick. The boys stared at their uncle in total shock, but he just stood there with a big, friendly smile on his face. He came up with a plan, but he'd need Princess Diana's help to actually pull it off. The teens just stared at each other, totally confused about what this guy was actually planning. Wilbald promised that once the instrument was fixed, she'd be welcomed at the Able Mansion like a total guest of honor. But he begged her not to run away, so she swore. The girl gave a deep bow, super hyped to accept the invite. The Scarlet Mage acted super mysterious and said they had one more big mission to finish, which totally blew young Zig's mind. Turns out there's another major player they have to meet and make a deal with. Camille remembered Danielle telling him that if he died, nobody would actually care because soldiers are just replaceable. And even though that really hurt his feelings back then, he finally realized she was 100% right. Why would he throw his life away when it would just put the person he's worked so hard to protect in total danger? Camille started overthinking everything and realized he was totally wrong, questioning if he could really just give up on life while feeling this much guilt. Even if everyone forgot the pain was left behind. He snapped his eyes open and saw the king standing right there by his bed, staring him down. He was totally panicking, looking everywhere to make sure the princess didn't get hurt. The second he saw she was okay, he finally let out a massive sigh of relief. Diana was so hyped to see he was actually okay, and her massive smile made him feel like $1,000,000. But her sudden reaction totally threw him for a loop, leaving him standing there blushing and completely stunned. The Red Mage walks right up to the bed and straight up admits he's been slowing down Camille Vaughn's healing on purpose, all so they can talk about the hit on Princess Diana. Knights were guarding every single corner, so the prisoner realized he was totally trapped and had to give up on escaping. Zig could tell his uncle had totally ditched his usual cheerful vibe, acting way more like a strict boss since he's the deputy commander of the 3rd Magic Group. Camille was totally locked in as the Scarlet Mage spoke, and after thinking it over, he finally spoke up with a super serious and respectful vibe. He turned around and apologized for real, his face turning bright red because he felt so bad about all his mistakes. He admitted he totally lost his cool and messed up, and since a basic sorry wasn't enough, he told them he'd answer every question and take whatever punishment they had coming for him. Camille was actually totally clueless about why things went down or how he even ended up in this mess. Wilbold snapped that he wasn't some idiot since he was actually volunteering to help them out. As soon as Camille joined Danielle, Uncle started grilling them, and they found out the girl in the dungeon thinks the Scarlet Mage kidnapped the princess and is planning an assassination because of his shady meetings. The magician was totally blown away that this guy actually fell for her story so fast. Count Balschmid says these guards are picked for their insane skills, so doubting them is basically like insulting the nobles and the royal family themselves. The deputy repeated exactly what the count said and asked if Daniela was actually some kind of noble. She made it crystal clear she was backing Prince Tobias, the Marquis of Baquet, and her uncle just nodded since he already knew she was playing a super dangerous game. He leaned in and whispered, asking if he had any more secrets, but the guy swore he was totally clueless and just following orders from the top. Looking totally serious, the Red Mage asked his final question, demanding Camille spill everything he knew about Princess Diana's rebellion in the Kingdom of Estania. The guy jumped up instantly, looking super offended, and yelled that the whole thing was total garbage. Wilbald was totally shocked and asked if the kid knew what was going down in the kingdom. But the guy immediately snapped back, refusing to believe the princess had anything to do with the rebellion and demanding to know why they were blaming her for something so messed up. Camille shouted that after years of guarding the princess, he knew for a fact she'd never start a rebellion since she's way too kind to even hold a grudge against people who betray her. The deputy claimed the princess was innocent and that the young guy was the real attacker. But the uncle wasn't buying that story for a second. The guy being grilled asked how he could prove his story and if the investigator actually had the power to force the truth out of people. Turns out this investigator guy actually has the exact same power. He told the guy he was going to dive into his thoughts and asked him if he was down for it. Camille was totally spiraling, thinking they were about to raid his mind, but the interrogator quickly stepped in to chill him out and promised they weren't going to do anything physical. The Scarlet Mage says they've got a special magic tool that can pull memories straight out of someone's head. Since this has never been used on a living person, nobody has any clue what kind of crazy side effects are about to hit him. Zig totally lost it, yelling that using that machine was just plain wrong, but Uncle didn't budge, saying this was the only way to find out the truth and finally trust his old. He said if Camille really was the princess's guard for that long, finding proof to clear their names would be easy. Then he paused and asked him for his take on the whole thing. Wilbald asked if he was actually ready to risk it all just to give them the real truth. He was totally spiraling and full of doubt, but then a girl ran up to him, looking genuinely hyped that he was still alive. She told the magician to hold on for a second. But Camille didn't hesitate to agree since this was the only way to prove the princess was innocent. He knew he had to own his mistakes and do his job, because he couldn't just be a clueless idiot anymore. The deputy kept a close eye on him and saw that he was totally locked in. After seeing the kid's insane drive, he knew it was time to team up and finally start their plan. Wilbold begs her not to get him wrong because he's actually desperate for help since the teleportation stone broke and everything is a total mess. But Camille still has no clue what he's even talking about. Turns out this tool wasn't dangerous at all. The worst thing it could do was give you a bad case of insomnia. This magic item had never even killed anyone before. The guy was completely stunned. The Scarlet Mage reminded the kid about getting blown sky high by that explosive doll, and the young knight was totally ready to take whatever punishment they threw at him. He borrowed a guard from the princess and told her not to worry because he'd send a letter to the crown prince to explain everything, and he even left Sieg behind to personally keep her safe. The second that couple tried to make a break for it, the guys jumped in to stop them. Diana was totally losing it, so the boy tried to calm her down by saying his uncle might be strict, but he's probably still a good guy. She knew things were only going to get way worse, so she had to keep her cool and stay totally calm no matter what. He flashed back to when he was crying and desperate to save her, and now he was talking to her again with total kindness and heart. He told her to stop bottling everything up and just talk to them, because her friends are always ready to back her up when things get rough. He knew what happened was a total nightmare, but she wasn't facing it alone because the Count, Emma, and the whole Abel family were right there to have her back. And since he's always got their back, they're totally gonna win and crush any problem that comes their way. She totally agreed with him, and Sieg gave her a warm smile to show they were making the right move. He knew he'd only survived this long because of luck, but things were about to get way more intense. The Abel family treasure is so powerful it could flip the entire world, and he knows that once he gets his hands on it, things are about to get seriously intense. Siedbert swore he'd never let his friends die, so he's going to do whatever it takes to get stronger and protect them from anything that stands in his way. A few days later at Majesta Castle, a servant's terrified scream suddenly rips through the halls, filling the whole place with pure panic. The confused guy asked King Julius why he was acting so weird. So Julius apologized and explained that his buddy Wilbald stopped writing letters but always finds crazy ways to cheer him up with big surprises. It's honestly hilarious how everything turned out so wild, especially since the Abel family is famous for having the absolute weirdest ideas. It makes total sense that even their legendary family treasure got dragged into this insane mess. He calmly told his servant to book a meeting with the Abel family, and the loyal assistant got it on the schedule right away. Julius realized right then that his deputy was actually demanding he do something totally insane and way out of line. See, the person who sent that letter was asking for a seriously crazy favor. The family was absolutely stoked to see their brother again and felt so lucky he was safe, especially since they'd been freaking out and praying for him every single day. Al was totally freaking out when the younger kid vanished into those creepy dungeons, but the moment he saw him safe, he tackled him with a hug so tight that the poor guy could barely even breathe. He cheered that Zeke was finally back and said it was time for a huge party. Plus, he had a secret gift ready that would totally shock the young hero. They gave him a fancy silk headband with cool patterns, and Marie teased that he looked like a total angel, making everyone burst out laughing. The guy tried to argue that he's a man, but the older one just laughed and said being hot is way more important than gender, while the younger guy secretly thought that being a... Theo turned back to face his brother Al and his favorite sister Marie. He told them to pipe down because the kid was totally wiped out from the trip, plus they had a super important guest with them, Princess Diana. Al explained that their dad headed to the capital and left him to watch over the girl, and when he apologized to the princess, she told him not to worry because seeing how much they cared for each other really warmed her heart. They've got a secret safe room ready for her to hide out in until the chaos dies down, and while she's going to be stuck there for a while, they're working overtime. Marie told the princess she could hit them up for help anytime and promised they'd have her back with whatever she needed. She gave the whole family a massive thank you for looking after her, saying she felt so much love and support from everyone. Zid promised he'd visit her way more often whenever he got the chance, and he even asked what her favorite candy was so he could bring her a treat later on. She promised to wait for him, but when Marie started digging for some juicy romantic details, he just told his sister they were strictly friends. He crashed onto the bed with a massive grin, just so stoked to finally be back home. Zig got back to his cozy room feeling more satisfied and chill than he ever had before. Haku backed his friend up instantly, saying he was actually super obsessed with his own room too. This guy just wanted some rare magic sand from the spirit forest, but he had no clue he was about to stumble onto something way bigger. That he's actually going to find a legit treasure from his family. Out of nowhere, this insane glowing sword called Upard pops up right in front of him, and he's so shocked he just freezes in his tracks. That weird voice in his head finally went quiet, and now this epic sword lets him pull off crazy magic moves without even breaking a sweat. He figured he only unlocked this epic new skill because he survived that insane trial. Even Zig's sharp eyes couldn't figure out the insane secrets or the real power hidden inside this weird weapon. Haku tries to check out the blade, but all he sees is a weird glow because a massive seal is hiding its secrets, making him realize there are some things even his genius pet doesn't know. The little guy realized his reputation was on the line, so he begged his owner for more time to find the answers, and his owner just smiled and told him to go for it. He started catching on that the voice in his sword knew way too much about the treasure, especially since these dungeons were built just to hide powerful soul fragments from the creator. Abel was totally stuck with the family treasure, realizing that fate just threw him a way bigger challenge than he ever signed up for. Siegbert started yelling because he was totally lost, and even though he promised his mom he'd guard the family treasure, he felt completely useless trying to protect something he didn't even understand. Thinking about the mess he was in, the kid realized he needed to hit up his dad for advice and dig through the family archives, especially since all these scary attacks meant he had to start training his... He thought about hitting up his uncle for some pro tips, but he had to keep his secret power totally hidden, and the pressure was seriously starting to get to him. The whole place was loaded with secrets, and he was terrified that one wrong move would wreck everything and reveal something he wasn't supposed to see. I finally realized it was time to trust my family and lean on their experience to guide me. High above the capital of Majesta sits the massive royal castle, where Julius finally sent a letter back saying he's not making a move until he looks at every single detail of what actually happened. Today, they're having a massive talk to catch the prince up on everything and make sure he's totally on board to help them out. Gilbert reminds him about the big royal meeting today with the prince, and Wilbald jokes that his brother totally hates these talks, especially when he has to face King Julius himself. He just coolly told them that he's not into anything that's boring or gets on his nerves. Julius von Majesta, the first prince of the great kingdom of Majesta, stepped up to give the arriving guests a super polite welcome. The newcomers bowed low and apologized for being late, but the prince told them it was totally fine since he was busy working anyway and was just hyped to hear their stories. As the prince checked the message, his eyes got a shady glow and he couldn't help but let out a massive smirk. Julius fought the urge to burst out laughing just to keep up his serious kingly image. He totally lost it and started laughing, leaving the Scarlet Mage super confused since he didn't think his message was funny. But the prince explained that the whole thing was actually hilarious, even if it wasn't meant to be a joke. He had a ton of questions for these visitors, but he decided to play it cool and figure out their main goal first. The prince was super curious why the group was sticking up for Princess Diana, especially since it meant picking a fight with the powerful Estonia. The king corrected himself, asking why they're wasting so much time and money on a girl who might not even help them or be worth the trouble. Or maybe her country has some secret perks that'll totally grab their attention and change their minds. Wilbald gave him some major respect, admitting he never expected a guy this young to be so sharp and figure out the big picture from just one tiny letter. What they were actually after was the inside scoop on everything going down at this super weird magic school. Julius made it clear they were talking about his own magic school. But what's the deal with Estonia? Well, the Scarlet Mage explained that the Estonian criminal who jumped them in the dungeon was actually using magic gear made right inside Julius's academy. Plus, he was positive the prince already knew the whole deal. This magic school is basically a no-go zone that even the royals can't mess with. The place is built like there's a mole right inside the school helping the attackers, and the visitors are desperate for any info on them, especially since someone already cursed the Abel family on purpose. This family has been hunting for the killer for years, and they aren't giving up anytime soon. That curse has already taken out a ton of people. After all that chaos, they started thinking of Julius frowned, thinking the curse and the Abel family treasure are totally linked, which gives us a massive hint about why the criminal is doing this. He said that because the Abel family is so legendary, the school bosses totally block them from stepping foot on the academy grounds. The prince explained that the school's leaders have always had beef with the royals and the Abels, and since the Shadow Ministry runs the show from the inside, it's the perfect spot for shady secrets. The royals are dying to know what's going down in that school, but they're strictly banned from entering. It's where all the heirs from the top noble families go to study. 1. Wilbald pointed out that getting info from the school is basically impossible, so their only choice is to look for clues on the outside, since even the most secret magic academies always end up leaking information. Julius realized the Abel family was using Princess Diana to be sneaky, which was super weird since they usually just charge straight in. The Scarlet Mage got super emotional and said the family was ready for any crazy challenge to keep their treasure safe, because nobody was allowed to mess with Abel's legacy and their history. He promised to hunt down every single person who plotted against the Abel family and make them pay, while the prince listened closely, totally locked in on their mission to get justice and save the family treasure. The guy kept it real and said he doesn't see how this helps the Majestic Kingdom, especially since the Abel treasure is so niche, and he's not even sure what his family gets for helping catch the bad guys. Wilbald kept pushing that the magic school's secrets would be a huge win for the family, but Julius shut him down, refusing to start a literal war for info that might not even be real or useful. Their families have been tight for ages, but backing a guy who started a rebellion is a massive risk, and he can tell these guys know exactly how messy this could get. He checked the message, and after reading those lines, he just couldn't help but burst out laughing. The Scarlet Mage snapped back that the letter wasn't even funny, calling the prince a total weirdo who was impossible to figure out. Julius said sorry for his reaction and admitted he was totally lost, asking if this was all about protecting Princess Diana, and Wilbald confirmed that every single move they made was for her safety. The prince liked their plan, but he had a better move. If they were cool with it, he'd personally handle the talks with the Estonians to stop this war before it even started. He offered the Scarlet Mage a fancy title, basically inviting him to join the kingdom's most powerful inner circle. Basically, the king is asking him to give up his freedom forever to serve the House of Majest, and now he's just waiting to see how he'll react to such a crazy deal. The Scarlet Mage is a total genius, and thanks to him, the kingdom's magic tech is basically on another level now. Good luck finding anyone who can actually hold a candle to him in a fight. Julius was 100% sure the Scarlet Mage's powers could totally change the whole country, and since a genius like that is 1 in a million, he warned everyone to imagine the disaster if he actually joined a rival kingdom instead. Wilbald cut him off right there, asking if the prince really thought his loyal friend would just switch sides and betray them. The king acted totally chill and said he wasn't blaming him, but he hinted that things could get so crazy that the specialist might be forced to find a new boss. Julius didn't care what the rest of his family thought about the candidate because he was only focused on Wilbald, totally convinced that a pro like him should belong only to his family, which completely blew the other guy's mind. Imagine if this fake guy actually loved his country like Gilbert, but since the Scarlet Mage is totally different, the prince is forcing him into a contract to lock his loyalty to the throne forever. So the Great Mage is finally locked down and can't mess with the kingdom anymore, but the Scarlet Mage is not having it, complaining that these rules are way too much and totally insulting to a pro. Julius just laughed and smiled, admitting he always plans for the absolute worst just to stop trouble before it even starts. He got super serious and said he really respects the guy's skills and needs someone who can actually protect the country, especially since he's done so much that he totally deserves this legendary title. The magician kept turning down the title, but the prince insisted he'd be so busy with royal work that it was actually a total win. He let the guy decide for himself if he was ready to take the title and play by the rules of the deal. He could just ditch the deal and send Princess Diana back to Estonia, since the whole choice was totally up to him. Wilbald felt the massive pressure as he tried to figure out what would happen no matter how this ended. He finally agreed to take the title, making the Majesta family leader super hyped to have his best friend and top strategist officially on his side. The prince demanded a fancy mansion and a full staff, because if things aren't perfect, the ceremony is a no-go, and he's only got 1 month to pull it off or the deal with Estonia is totally dead. Julius told him that joining the Majesta dynasty would make the family a massive deal worldwide, And the guy was totally blown away by how smart Julius really was. The king offered him a massive promotion on the western border with total control over everything, and the Scarlet Mage just wanted to double-check if he'd really be in charge of the farming. While the new champ gets ready for the big ceremony, the royal messenger is swamped with meetings with Estonia, but he's still totally hyped to see the pro finally get their official new rank. Wilbold nervously ran his hand through his hair, realizing the king was so insanely smart that he'd been backed into a corner and had to rethink everything. Gilbert was totally hyped about the royal title, but the guy just got annoyed since he doesn't care about being famous, and now he's got even more work on his plate. He tossed his own dreams aside and chose to give up his freedom just to keep his nephew safe, knowing that his duty was way more important than what he wanted. After Zig crushed the monsters deep in the dungeon, the treasure finally showed up. It's super obvious this wasn't just luck, and there's a huge secret behind it. Now the Tata. Gilbert asked if his brother was building a massive mansion, but he said he'd rather just find a chill, empty house if he had to stay in the capital. Finding a perfect vassal was the next big hurdle, and with the ceremony deadline breathing down their necks, they had to try some pretty wild tricks to find someone who actually made the cut. Trying to borrow one of Gilbert's guys is basically impossible, and that arrogant long-haired jerk is definitely going to shut Wilbold down. The Abel family is obsessed with tradition and keeping massive secrets, so they can't just pick any random person. They need someone who's 100% loyal and has proven they can be trusted. The Scarlet Mage scrolled through his mental list until he landed on an old friend he knew was solid enough to handle this massive mission. A memory suddenly clicked, and he knew right then that this was the only person who could actually pull it off. Nikolai thought this whole meeting felt super sketchy and asked what was up, but Theo just said he was ordered to bring him and Siege along, even though he was totally shocked his older relative actually agreed to give out the title. The kid was totally confused, thinking his uncle just found out he was being dragged on the mission. But it turns out everyone already knew the whole time. Wilbold stepped into the hall and gave a huge thanks to everyone for showing up so fast when he called for them. Nikolai was mumbling and acting super nervous, but the older mage just told him to relax and speak up like he normally would. He called Nikolai over to talk about teaming up with Zig, and decided to skip the fancy talk and just get straight to the point. The Lord officially offers the kid a spot as his vassal, and this insane news leaves both him and Frank absolutely floored. The kid was hyped and asked why he was the one, so the Scarlet Mage made it clear. He was taking the title and needed a partner he could actually count on. The guy kept Zig's massive secret to himself, and that loyalty is exactly why he was picked as a vassal. Especially since the Abel family has way too many secrets to trust anyone but the most reliable people. Wilbold suggests pulling double duty as a bodyguard and a servant, officially joining up just to keep his nephew safe from Prince Hera's non-stop teasing. Theo and the guy were ready to talk back, but they got shut down before they could even finish their sentence. The Scarlet Mage warned that the new vassal has to sign a magic contract to keep Zig's secret, and if they ever break the rules, it's game over for them instantly. Everyone living and working at the mansion signed that contract. They told the guy that if he died doing his job, he'd be a total hero and his family would be set for life. The future leader looked totally crushed as he explained that his sister was in a massive mess. He had to sell every single thing he owned, and now they're just crashing in a rented place, Nikolai took all the blame, saying he just wasn't strong enough to save his family in time, while Wilbold reminded him that he completely failed to find a cure for the sickness. The guy said the doctors were totally useless, so he was just using magic herbs to help his sister deal with the pain. But the Scarlet Mage took a good look and realized they might actually be able to cure her for real. The uncle decided to take a huge gamble and test the power to see if they could recover, promising that if it failed, he'd provide them with everything from a house and clothes to their own servants. The deal sounded super legit and way too good to pass up. He swore right then and there that he'd never let his boys Zig and Theo down. He was totally sure After thinking it over, he finally decided to serve Wilbold, risking his life to save his sister and make things right. Nikolai was ready to risk everything for his sister, but the boss warned him that being this reckless would end in a total disaster. He backed the plan because he knew protecting family was a must, and they shook hands to officially kick off their new alliance. Nikolai never thought he'd end up as the kid's bodyguard, and the boy was just as shocked to find out this was the guy hired to protect him. It finally clicked for him. Since he was assigned as the bodyguard, Zig was officially the new owner. The kid realized the bodyguard was totally working for his uncle now because of the Estonia deal, so he rushed home to tell Sarah and figure out how to get the whole family to move. Right when someone suddenly called his name, Thiel's talk with him was a total nightmare because he found out the guy sold their family mansion in secret and hid the fact that his sister was getting dangerously sick. He told him the guy was already doing so much that asking for money felt totally wrong, and since Theobald was his only real friend in the Abel family, he didn't want to dump all his money drama and stress on them. He yelled that he was strong enough to help his friend, and if they still couldn't handle it, he'd just call his uncle who could fix literally anything, because trying to do, Theo reminds him they're bros who look out for each other. So he starts prepping a room for Nikolai's sister and asks what she likes, while Nikolai awkwardly tries to say he doesn't. The kid started yelling about how his uncle's servant was stopping him from doing what needed to be done, and his face twisted into a totally evil look. Her friend smiled and said Sarah loves bright white rooms because they're super peaceful, and after getting a huge thank you for the help, they just grinned and were totally down with the plan. A few days later at the Abel mansion, Teal gets all serious with Sister Marie and lets her know the Bodden family is about to show up. Marie was super hyped to see some new faces since this massive mansion had been a total ghost town, and her little brother jumped in to agree, saying the guests were already standing right at the front door. Out of nowhere, 3 members of the Bodden family showed up right in front of them. Nikolai was totally freaked out by that insane speed and checked if his sister was okay, but Sarah just gave him a confident nod before Marie introduced herself and led the group to the reception. The happy kid started hugging everyone in sight and told the little boy that he and his sister were definitely going to be best friends since they're so much alike. Marie told Nikolai to chill with the crazy greeting, but he just grinned and said that's how he always does it, while she warned him not to actually snap Zig's neck. Sarah could tell her brother was way too hyped to think straight, so she apologized for his crazy behavior and introduced the loyal staff who stayed behind even after the mansion was sold. The girl introduced herself as Sarah von Bodden and apologized for looking like a total mess. Marie was super nice and called the girl totally charming, but Sarah was really just trying to find her brother's boss to talk to him herself. Since Wilbald was stuck dealing with some emergency, she didn't need any help from the Abel family, so her brother wouldn't have to sign his life away in that vassal contract. Nikolai totally lost his cool and screamed at her for breaking their deal, yelling that something must have happened to make her change her mind. Sarah told him straight up that she wasn't going to let him pay such a massive price to save her, and deep down, she just couldn't accept it. Her brother promised her that he's ready to go to the absolute limit and crush every single obstacle just to keep her happy. The girl refused to listen and insisted on heading home, but she tripped the second she turned around. Luckily, Zig caught her just in time and told her she needed to be way more careful. He felt super guilty and apologized for accidentally touching her cheek, knowing he'd totally made things awkward for her. The servant saw her fever was spiking again and rushed her to the room, while Mira made it clear they weren't going home until she was back on her feet. Nikolai was totally panicking the whole time as he watched his sister walk away. The brother was totally lost on why his sister was turning down the cure she'd waited forever for. So Theo asked if he'd mentioned that the contract would literally cost him his life, but Nikolai was totally blown away by how Sarah kept fighting her sickness, and even though he was dying to talk to her, his friend told him to wait until everyone chilled out. Zig tells the servant to go pick some flowers, hoping a quick walk and a real talk will help the brother and sister finally see eye to eye. He thanked the little kid for being so nice. Haku, the talking animal, started scratching at the door, and Marie worriedly asked if she was feeling better after going through so much pain. Sarah was feeling like a total burden to her family, but Marie tried to cheer her up by saying that even though Nikolai is a hot-headed jerk, he actually loves his sister and would do anything to protect her. The sister was crying her eyes out, blaming herself for ruining her family's life, while the girl standing nearby listened to every single word. She said her health totally tanked a few years back, and right after her dad passed away, her big brother stepped up to take care of her. But even with super expensive medicine, she just wasn't. Their money vanished so fast they had to sell their family mansion just to afford that healing herb. And the news hit Sarah so hard she was completely frozen in shock. She finally realized her family sold their happy home and all those memories just to keep her alive a little longer. Choking down that magic herb medicine was getting way harder, but she knew the sickness would win if she stopped, and she refused to let her brother look at her with those terrified, pained. The money for her meds was totally drying up. Sarah felt like she was just a burden, sucking away their cash while giving nothing back. Then Marie realized Nikolai must have told her about the contract. She could just tell something was seriously wrong with her brother. The more he talked, the more she realized his life was actually on the line. He even looked completely wrecked when they met up after. Sarah is totally obsessed with her brother because after their dad died, he was always there to cheer her up with hilarious stories and her favorite flowers. She can't even imagine life without her brother and refuses to let anyone take him, especially since he'd do anything for her, and the thought of him dying because of her is her absolute worst nightmare. Marie pulled the girl into a super tight hug, holding her close until she finally started to calm down. Marie finally saw how much Sarah was actually hurting inside, and she was so thankful that Sarah was brave enough to get real and share her deepest secrets. Sarah just wanted to go back to those childhood days of laughing and playing with her brother, wishing with all her heart that he could finally find some peace and be happy again. She couldn't even remember the last time her brother actually gave her a real, honest smile. It totally crushed him, but he knew there was no way he could let his sister see his face. He finally got the guts to walk away, leaving the group looking totally heartbroken with their massive bouquet of flowers as they watched him go. Wilbold saw how serious things were getting and decided to just stay back and watch, figuring the new guy just needed a little more time. The kid slumped down onto the grass, feeling totally crushed and stuck in his own dark thoughts. Nikolai looked at the boy and explained that when their dad suddenly got sick and died, his sister was just a tiny baby who had no clue what was going on, leaving the whole family. Losing his dad hit his sister's health really hard too. Her sickness started getting way worse out of nowhere. He was totally terrified that Sarah could die at any second, and the stress was, he was totally losing it because he was so scared of his sister dying. He had no clue how he'd even survive if she wasn't by his side. He put everything on the ate. Everything the dad worked his whole life for was gone forever. And if the kid was just as sharp as Zig, he might have actually fixed the mess and saved his family. Nikolai took the fall for everything to protect the people he loved, but he totally missed how much his lone wolf act was actually hurting his friends and family. He felt like a total idiot for thinking he was some big hero protecting his sister, when really he was just a selfish kid who couldn't handle anything by himself. He's finally realizing that trying to be a lone wolf was a total mistake, and he should have just asked his friends and mentors for help. He realized he totally missed his shot, and because he was so careless, he lost everything. His sister's favorite house, his parents' hard work, and everything his family had built for generations. He completely trashed his family's future with his own hands, but Zig had his back, reminding him that saving his sister was the only thing that mattered after everything he sacrificed to make it happen. The kid promised he'd do anything to keep his sister alive, even after giving up his home and his own happiness for her. But he told him that if they worked hard, they could totally. The guy sadly warned him that even with insane powers, you can't bring someone back to life. And that reality check left Nikolai shaking with fear over the massive weight of his choices. His best friend hyped him up to start from scratch, promising he'd get all his money and respect back because his squad was ready to have his back through everything. Sieg, his brother Theo, and Sarah are right there by his side, telling him not to quit and promising that they'll all face the next day together as a team. Marie and Sarah suddenly show up in front of the guys, and Sarah is totally panicking, asking where her brother is because she's scared he's actually mad at her for how Nikolai got a kick out of how clueless his sister was. So he promised he wasn't holding a grudge and told her to stop stressing since he totally understood. He finally admitted she was right and that he should have told her the plan instead of trying to be a solo hero and making everything way more complicated. This time he was dead set on leveling up and not repeating his past fails. And since his master gave him such a big job, it's clear he really believes in his potential. He swore he wasn't going to die and promised to give it his all to make his sister and master proud. He told Sarah to just trust him, hoping his assessing gaze would find the cure to save her, and with Zig's hype talk ringing in his head, he felt totally fired up and knew he could pull this off. Nikolai knew he had a lot of nerve asking for a favor after his mistakes, but his plan was totally stuck without his sister's help. His sister's got his back, giving him the massive confidence boost he needs to crush any obstacle in his path. Sarah jumped into the fray to help rebuild her family, finally getting the chance to back up her brother like she always wanted. She swore she wouldn't let the sickness beat her, promising to recover so she could have her brother's back with everything she's got. Sarah's sure she can handle any struggle as long as her brother is alive. And when she thanks him for always having her back, Nikolai completely breaks down in tears, feeling so guilty for his past mistakes and begging her to forgive him. He dropped to his knees right in front of her, looking totally heartbroken as he begged her one more time to forgive him for all the pain he caused. Deep in the ancient Abulba chambers, Wilbold locked in and fired up his appraisal magic to sniff out secrets and any hidden dangers. With a burst of magic, The guy instantly saw what the disease really was and why normal medicine failed, while the girl's brother begged to know what was going on. Turns out the sickness is called Mona overload, which is basically when way too much magic gets trapped in your body, causing painful blisters to pop up everywhere and making you feel totally weak. This disease is super rare, and looking at her symptoms, she was born with way more magic than a normal human body can even handle. This doesn't usually happen, but Sarah's body couldn't let her magic out, so it just piled up inside her and made her super sick. Wilbald was dying to know why that herb was helping Sarah until it finally clicked. The plant was actually soaking up magic energy, so he asked if there was any way to cure her for good. The Scarlet Mage said there's a way to make it happen, but it's super complicated, and his follower was honestly blown away by what he heard. He explained that her body was totally overloaded with magic, and it was actually killing her, so they had to drain the extra power first. But when the servant asked if they could use a curse magic is super rare in this world because to actually master it, you have to ditch your humanity and throw all your morals out the window. Wilbald warned him that curse users aren't even human anymore and said he'd never trust Sir with a monster like that. So when Nikolai asked if the magic herb could help, they had to find a curse magic user they could actually trust. But since those guys are super rare, it was basically like looking for a needle in a haystack. And our hero was Zyg hyped Nikolai up by promising they'd find a mage no matter what. And when the servant asked where to start, Wilbald suggested they split the work so he could hunt for The master said to keep using the magic herb, but to be super careful with the dose, because if he messed up, it would turn into a deadly poison. So the nephew realized he couldn't hide. He knew it was finally time to talk, so he bolted straight for the door. The kid nervously walks up to his uncle, who's totally surprised to see him, but when he tries to start a conversation, he gets so anxious that he just starts tripping over his words. Zickbelt drops the bomb that he can use curses, and Willie's so shocked he has to ask him to say it again. He asked to take a look. Zeke gave him the green light, and now he was getting ready to show off his insane power. Creepy curse marks suddenly flare up all around the kid, totally shocking his uncle, as Zickbell apologizes for lying to the family for years just so he can save Sarah and see Nikolai. Zeke puts his hand on his chest with total confidence and tells Sarah and Nikolai that he's the one who can help them. The uncle just laughed at the confused boy and told him he'd already guessed Zeke had curse powers and was trying to stay out of sight, then asked exactly how long he'd been hiding. Uncle asked if Zeke had been hiding since he was born, and the kid just said he didn't even know how to explain. He's not sure if he can really open up about his past life, and as he breaks down crying, Willie sees him and immediately apologizes. He apologizes but admits he's just super hyped because Zickbelt might be way more special than his uncle realized, and maybe some insanely powerful being has their eye on him. Uncle says they're basically the same because he's also hiding a huge secret from the family, and after giving Zickbelt props for keeping his cool, he promises to share his own story when the time. The man says it's not time yet, and the boy realizes his uncle is just like him, hiding a massive secret of his own. Willie's glad the guy finally came clean, but now they have to figure out if he can already use that sucking curse or if he needs to learn it. So Zeke just asks for a lesson and promises he'll master it in no time. The man tells the kid to chill out and explains that Zeke is going to handle the curses, but he warns that one tiny mistake will cost him everything, and he'd really rather the boy stay away from this dark magic. The guy warns that if he doesn't step in, the kid will just figure it out in secret. So he offers to teach Zeke the safe way to use curses, and Zeke is super grateful. Willie says they need to start now, but warns the kid that things are about to get way tougher, and the boy just promises he'll give it his best shot. Zickbelt is super hyped that he's finally learning curses, and even though he was terrified to speak up, he actually pulled it off. He's dying to find out more. Zeke finally left his uncle behind, and he's totally done feeling guilty about his powers, because this time he knows he can actually save the day. Left all on his own, the kid gets a letter from the Majesta family saying the meeting with Estonia is finally set, and his uncle is dying to see how they're going to react. Meanwhile, over at the Estonia Royal Palace, Count Tobias is absolutely losing his mind and screaming about a letter he thinks is a total joke, while his servant begs him to chill out. Tobias yells at the servant to shut up, demanding they hand Diana over to Estonia while fuming that the Abel family interfered, but the Count thinks he's just talking crazy. Count Toby is super salty that the royals invited the princess and her Majesta crew to Estonia, but his servant tells him to pipe down and just listen to them since the big tournament is almost here. The Count shares a twisted plan with his servant, saying that since the tournament is in Estonia, Tobias can finally wipe out the Abels and Princess Diana all in one go. A few days later, an able family assistant gets Sarah into some new clothes and tells her she looks amazing, making Sarah give a super shy thank you. The girl feels guilty about the pricey clothes, but Sarah tells her to stop worrying because she's finally living out her dream of having a little sister to dress up. She tells Sarah she used to dress Zeke in super cute clothes to make up for it, but now the guy is doing everything he can just to run away from her. The beauty is so hyped to finally have a little sister, and even though Sarah says the girl is happy too, the kid totally denies it the second she's asked. Willie's niece is super hyped that the big day is finally here. Knowing her uncle would pull it off this fast, and now she's asking Sarah if she's ready. She promises Sarah that everything's going to work out and tells her to be a strong girl who always has her brother's back. Denise tells her the dress is basically a fresh start if she puts in the work, and Sarah promises that everything is about to be different. Sarah, Nikolai, and the rest of the Abel family are huddled outside her uncle's office, making their final moves because only one girl is allowed to go in. One of the girls asks where Z is, only to find out he's been missing since this morning, but Sarah's brother promises to come running if anything goes wrong, and she's super thankful for the backup. Her brother is totally panicking, trying to convince himself everything is fine, but Sarah calls him out for shaking and asks how he's supposed to help her before she ends up being the one to calm him down. Sarah walks into her uncle's office with the guards helping her out, but she's totally shocked to find Zeke already there waiting to say hello. He blocked the door and told her she had to sign the contract, which was the exact same Zik belt deal they'd just figured out. Her uncle sees she's totally confused and explains they have to keep this a secret, and when she asks Zeke about it, he promises he can actually break her curse. As the vice chief of the third squad, he promises her that Zeke is a total pro at magic and asks Sarah if she's ready to trust him. She decides to trust him because his whole family has been so incredibly kind to her. Zeke thanks her. Then Uncle explains that this blood contract is a total death sentence if she breaks it, something they definitely shouldn't tell Nikolai. But Sarah promises she'll never mess up. She adds that her brother made a secret deal behind her back, so this is her payback, and the uncle tells her the plan is officially a go. The uncle said he'd wait right outside and told Ziki and the girl to scream if anything went wrong, giving the boy's shoulder a firm squeeze before heading out. The guy tells Zik he's been prepping for days and is totally ready to win. But he's got to be patient, listen to his uncle's advice, and stop the second those scary... The kid nodded at his uncle's advice, feeling totally ready to give it his all after all that prep. And then his uncle wished them luck before finally heading out. Now that they're alone, the boy tells Sarah it's time to start and asks for her hand, making her get all shy and nervous. Zeke told her he totally got why she was hiding her skin, but he needed to see it to heal her, so she nervously held out her cursed, scarred hand. The boy was shaking at first, but he pulled himself together, grabbed her hand, and promised that he'd give her and her brother a chance to start their lives all over again. Zeke grabbed her hand with both of his and unleashed his power, trying to force that curse right off of Sarah. Zeke stays locked in on the ritual, holding her hand and picturing the curse fading away. But just as he thinks he's got this, a voice in his head asks how he's going to save her when he couldn't even save his own mom, Lyra. Zeke snaps his eyes open and spots a dark shadow looming right behind Sarah, and he's totally freaked out to realize it's actually his brother, Gelt. Shadow tells Zeke that no matter how special he is, he's still a total weakling who'll never change, and his power should really belong to someone who actually deserves it. That's why the Shadow keeps haunting him, planning to take Zeke out and steal his power since he's the only one who can actually bring someone back to life. This creepy hallucination snatched the boy and told him to hand over his powers and his life. Zikbert's head is spinning, and even though he knows this is all just a trick, he can barely catch his breath while Sarah shakes with pure terror. Breaking the curse is straight up painful, and he's not even sure he can do it, but he pushes through the agony just to keep her safe. Zeke knows Gelt is way stronger, but he refuses to lose because he's fighting for Sarah. And even though his magic is still messy and he's got a lot to... He's getting hit with all those bad memories. But he's not letting history repeat itself because this time, he's got the power to do anything. He finally broke through the fake version of his brother Gert, and as a bright white light wrapped around him and Sarah, she snapped her eyes open in total shock. Sarah's jaw drops in shock, but Zeke tells her the nightmare is finally over and she's safe now. Right outside the office doors, Nikolai is waiting with his whole crew and his uncle, and while he's still totally shaking with nerves, Theo turns to him and says she's got something to give him. She hands the guy a pot of flowers that was actually meant for Sarah. She promises him that these flowers are the perfect move, and even though Nick's totally unsure if Sarah will actually want them, she tells him to relax because she's definitely going to love. The door suddenly swings open and Nikolai whips around in a panic, but he stops dead in his tracks because he can't believe his eyes. Sarah bursts out of her uncle's office and shows everyone she's totally clean, with not a single mark on her face, hands, or anywhere else. She finally spots the flowers in his hands and asks about them, so he tells her they're all for her while he's still totally in shock. Then she grabs the pot and shouts that they're her absolute favorites, stunned that he actually remembered. Sarah is super hyped as she hugs the flower pot and calls Nikolai her brother, leaving him totally shocked. Nick is totally losing it with emotion, seeing his sister finally 100% cured. He finally pulls his little sister into a super tight hug and tells her he's just so happy. Zeke pokes his head out to see what's up, but his uncle tells him to stay back because this is a massive deal for them. The guy promises the kid that Sarah's going to recover just fine, and that Nikolai will be right there to have her back. Uncle asks if Zeke is doing all right after draining all that curse power, and Zeke says he pulled it off, but his head is totally spinning. Leaving his uncle's office, the kid squeezes his fist, hyped that he finally stopped running from his brother's shadow and looked him right in the face. He's totally sure of himself now, knowing for a fact that he's never going to run away again. Uncle grabs Zeke's hand and tells him the trouble is over, so now it's finally time for the title ceremony. He says Princess Diana's artifact is finally fixed and needs to be returned, then calls the kid over for a super important talk that the boy keeps asking about. Zeke kicks back on the sofa in Diana's room while his uncle stands before them, and when the princess shows off that her animal ears and tail are finally hidden, Zeke is super hyped for her, but even though she's incredibly thankful to both of them, the uncle just tells her it's really no big deal. The uncle then invites Diana to his big crowning ceremony, and while she's totally shocked, he drops the news that Zeke is invited too. Diana turned to Zeke for answers, but he was just as confused as she was, until the guy told them he had a genius plan to keep them safe. The uncle suddenly asks Zeke if he wants to marry Princess Diana, and it totally catches both of them off guard. On the day of the title conferment, the girls are buzzing about Zeke Abel, a guy who's never even been to a ball but is somehow already engaged to Princess Diana of Estonia, and now everyone's dying to see if he'll actually show up for the ceremony. At last, Zeke and Princess Diana from the Majesty family finally made it to the hall reserved for the big ceremony to get their new titles. Everyone's eyes are glued to the couple, and Zeke is totally blown away by how stunning Diana looks with her magnetic new vibe. He feels a bit out of his league standing next to her, but Zeke was already losing it thinking about the engagement, but then his uncle told him the whole thing was actually a total fake. Her uncle's forcing everyone to lie just to keep Diana safe from Prince Tobias, because like she told Zeke, if she marries into another kingdom, she loses her claim to the throne forever. He gave Dia props for her quick thinking and told her he's announcing their engagement at the title ceremony. Zeke is blown away by his uncle's crazy plan to keep the princess safe from Prince Tobias, but his jaw totally drops when Diana announces she's actually getting engaged to the guy. She started worrying if she could really pull off being a bride well, but Zeke jumped off the couch and cut her off, shouting that he'd totally lie if it meant keeping his best friend safe. The princess is totally shocked by how he talks to her, and even though the fake engagement freaked him out at first, he knows it's the only way to keep Dia safe. The uncle was so sure they'd say yes that he already announced the engagement to everyone, and since they get along so well, he's hyped for them to take on the world together, which the couple totally agreed with. The princess looked at Zeke to make sure he was actually cool with everything, and he promised her he was totally down. He was just stuck in his own head for a sec. The kid says sorry for taking so long and promises not to mess up, but Dia tells him she's the one who's actually nervous, wondering if she can really pull this off. While the Abel family is hanging out and chatting, Nikolai asks Theo if he can finally ditch his tie, but she shuts him down because he's her uncle's subordinate and needs to look professional, leaving Nick to complain about how much he hates dressing up. He says he'd rather wear his dad's armor, but Theo tells him he looks great and to just relax, while Frau totally loses it and starts cuddling Zeke's friend because she's just way too cute. Frau gushes over how cute the girl looks in her dress and has her spin around to show it off. Then she introduces herself to Zeke's friend, saying Frau says she already filled everyone in on the dungeon mess by telepathically calling her uncle, but the girl keeps grilling her about how that mind link actually works. She explains that their telepathy is all thanks to the contract's power, while Haku tries sliding the bracelet onto his paw. The magic cat is obsessed with his fancy new robe and he's literally glowing today. Willie tells Zeke this new bracelet is a special charm to keep Haku safe from any more villains, and just as Zeke and Haku say thanks, a mysterious voice calls out to him. It's Aunt Louise and Grandpa Herbert, and Louise is totally shocked by how much Zeke has grown. Zeke remembers meeting them when he was just a baby and gives them a super nice greeting, making his auntie grin because he's way too polite for his age. She tells him she's heard he's a top-tier magician and wants to see his moves, so he promises to show off his skills the next chance he gets. The princess walks right up and introduces herself as Diana von Estonia, the third princess of the Kingdom of Estonia, saying it's a total honor to finally meet them. Diana begs for their forgiveness, saying she's genuinely sorry that her country's uprising dragged them into such a mess. Herbert tells the princess to look up because they already know what went down in the dungeon, and Madame Louise tells her not to worry since nobody doubts her or blames her for any. Louise and Herbert admit they basically forced Diana to join them, so they're the ones who should be apologizing, but the princess just thanks them and says she'll never forget their kindness. The guy next to his dad asks if Gelt finally showed up, and his dad says he's here, but it's weird because Gelt never replied to his letter, and the son realizes he got ghosted on all his messages. Willie's totally confused and asks if they're basically keeping him prisoner at the Magic Academy, especially since Jill tried to get Leah and Gelt together back when she was alive. But the school always blocked it, saying it would mess up his studies. His dad says no because this was the kid's own call, and after Leah's funeral, he swore he was never coming back home. Theo admits she and her sister have never actually met Gelt, and even Magic couldn't track him down since he's kept totally separate from the other students as some kind of special case. Willie's convinced this magic school is hiding something shady and calls them a bunch of nerds. But then Crown Prince Majestic shows up to announce that if you've got magic, you're forced to enroll. The prince tells Zeke he's got to head there eventually, and maybe then we'll finally see what's actually going on inside. Zeke says hi to the heir, and the guy says he's heard a ton about him from Willibald, which totally blows Zeke's mind. Zeke caught the look on Prince Magist's face and got totally freaked out that the guy knew way more about him than he realized. The prince admits he loves watching kids' faces change right in front of him, so Willie tells him to stop picking on Zeke. The prince shuts down the talk about the academy since they're in public and tells Willie the king is finally here, calling him the main character of the show. Uncle says he's ready, and the prince is totally down with that answer, so he calls for the ceremony to start while Zeke is stuck worrying about his brother Gelt and the chaos at the Magic Academy. Willie walks right up to the throne and kneels as the king announces that today, Willibald von Abel is officially becoming a count. The king thanks his uncle for everything he's done. As soon as Willie finishes his oath to the king, the whole palace erupts into a massive dance party. Zeke is standing right next to Princess Diana, finally realizing his family is actually a massive deal to all these fancy nobles. And even though he's part of this big ceremony, he's totally freaking out because he has zero experience and no clue what he's supposed to do. The princess walks up and asks him to dance, reminding him they're on a mission and that hitting the dance floor is the perfect cover, and Zeke totally agrees she's right. He admits he's a total klutz at dancing and is scared of making her look bad, but the princess tells him it's totally fine since they're just kids who can get away with. Diana reminded him how he saved her life in that dungeon, so now it was her turn to have his back, and he totally agrees. Zeke nervously asks the princess for a dance, and after she happily agrees, she takes his hand and they finally start their dance together. The prince and his partner spotted the young couple, and suddenly, everyone else turned to stare at them too. While they're out on the dance floor, Diana keeps hyping Zeke up until he's finally acting confident, and when he tells her she looks better than anyone else in the room, she gives him a huge thank you. Zeke kept the compliments coming, telling the princess she looked way better before, and that he couldn't even take his eyes off her back in the dungeon because she looked so sweet. His words totally caught Diana off guard, making her stumble and apologize in a panic, but he was just glad the old Diana was back and felt way more chill. The princess told him that everyone used to be totally grossed out by her old look, but Zeke just reminded her that he already said he liked her. He flashed a grin and told her she was way better now that she was actually real, and she just gave him a quiet thank you with a happy smile. Meanwhile, two gossips were whispering that there was no way a little girl could lead a whole rebellion, and they were sure Prince Tobias was just making up lies about her. Back at the balcony, Willie's hanging out with Nikolai and Prince Majesta, telling them he's done all he can since he already took his oath. Nikolai's worried he's being too blunt in front of royalty, but the prince actually gives him props for playing the part of a loyal knight so well. The heir told Willie that since he's officially an earl now, he's going to work him to the bone once they finish off Estonia, leaving poor Willie begging for mercy. The count said he kept his word and asked Julius if he could finally make a deal with Estonia, and Julius told him they'd already sorted out the paperwork to start talking. The prince says Estonia is down to negotiate with Diana and her Majesta squad, but there's one major catch that the count immediately asked about. The Majesta heir says the Abel family has to enter a tournament in Estonia just to make a deal, But Estonia and Nikolai are seriously questioning if that's even necessary. Julius made it clear that someone from the Abel family has to enter the tournament, or they won't even consider making a deal. Nikolai asked why Estonia was setting all these rules, and the Prince of Majesta basically told him that the Abel family should already be experts on how this tournament works. Willie told the prince his family knows all about that massive tournament every 3 years where the world's best masters face off, and he bragged that Abel heirs have been crushing it there for generations. Nick said Albert was supposed to compete again, but after everything that just happened, they're pulling him out. The Count mentioned that a ton of other countries were also ditching the tournament. Then he asked the prince what was up with Lenny and the Empire. The heir said their plan was super obvious and he didn't want Al involved. But since he was still traveling to another country, he really needed a guard he could actually trust. Willie was totally shocked since Albert only became the Majesta heir's bodyguard a few years ago and got super attached to him. So when the Count joked about the prince finally making a friend, Willie snapped back that he's the last person who should be talking. Nikolai jumps into the conversation to say he's leaving, and when Willibald looks at him confused, he explains that entering the tournament is a way better plan than just guarding Princess Diana since he can spy on Prince Tobias at the same time. Albert bursts onto the balcony and cuts them off, telling his dad that they need to stop right now. Albert told them he'd heard every word and wanted to handle the tournament himself, leaving Willie shocked since he's usually never this fired up. Al said he was just trying to protect Zeke's fiancée, asking the group if they'd seen how perfect Zeke and Diana looked together and how she literally glows by his side, making even his own heart skip a beat. Albert used to let his dad do all the heavy lifting, but now he's finally stepping up to save their future. While Willie asks Nikolai and the prince if they ever mentioned that Julius warned Al that this year's tournament was a total death trap, but Al didn't care, saying it was the perfect chance to protect the treasure and show the world how strong their family really is. The prince let out a massive sigh, realizing he couldn't talk Al out of it, so he let him go while keeping Gilbert behind for a different job. And even though Gil was a little salty, he agreed because he totally got the situation. Nikolai handed the tournament over to his son Albert, who told him to relax because he was definitely going to crush it and win. Back at the Abel mansion, Diana tells everyone in the meeting room that they're heading to Estonia with Prince Julius, and they need to make sure they're totally prepared. Uncle Willie cut her off with a snap of his fingers, saying it was time to go over their big plan for Estonia. Before they even started the plan, he told Diana he was destroying their dungeon contract because even if the marriage was fake, you just don't use magic to bind your own family. The princess refused to tear up the contract, telling the Count and Emma that only family was actually bound by it just to keep Zeke's secret safe, and her advisor totally backed her up when she asked them to understand. The princess told Willie it's totally unfair if she's the only one whose contract gets broken. The Count told her to stop stressing because Zeke wasn't actually bound by a contract. He'd just tricked the kid with a total fake that Zeke never would have signed if he knew. Willie refused to let the kid sign his life away on some contract, and even though the princess told him she hated him for it, he just joked that her words hit him right in the heart. Uncle Willie tried to start the meeting, but Diana's advisor Pal cut him off to say his son Irmond would help them in Estonia, since Irm is the one crushing the rebellion and he already knows the princess is innocent. The counselor explains that his son Irmond rules a borderland where everyone trusts him, but if they team up now, it'll look way too suspicious. And Willie is honestly floored that the guy's own son is the one trying to crush the rebellion. The dad says he's proud of his son and mentions that Princess Juliana is meeting Diana at the border to invite her over. But the uncle thinks this friendly welcome is a bad move because Willie reminded everyone that Prince Tobias is still a major problem, especially since he didn't even care when Diana and Zeke got engaged. And even though they hoped he'd chill out once the princess lost her claim to the throne, the guy hasn't changed one bit. The guy sighed and pointed out that Princess Diana wouldn't have even gotten the throne anyway, and the advisor totally agreed with him. His uncle explains that the third prince, Matthias, is actually next in line for the throne as the first wife's son, but since he's only 13, he's still waiting. Willibald kept explaining that the first Prince Tobias was actually the heir to the throne until Matthias was finally born. Then Willie brings up Prince Elias, the third in line, but he's the son of a concubine who doesn't even want the throne, and his uncle says nobody in the palace would ever support him anyway. The guy explains that the first princess is totally out because she married a count, making Diana fourth in line and Juliana, the concubine's daughter, fifth. Willie kept talking, explaining that the king is super sick, so the fifth heir, Juliana, is basically running the kingdom. Everyone loves her for being so kind, and if Estonia turns down the crown, Uncle wrapped it up by saying that with the king sick, Matthias is the true heir. Tobias is fighting to get back the throne Toby stole from a 13-year-old Juliana. Zeke realized this was why they were framing Princess Diana, and she knew they could leak the secret of her real face at any second. Willie warned the princess that this would only cause more drama since Estonia hates beastmen, even though a divine beast actually founded the kingdom. And right then, Powell decided to drop a total bombshell. Diana saw how confused the guy looked and cornered him with the rest of the group, demanding he spill everything he knew about her true form, while Powell clenched his fists and admitted he wanted to take this secret to his grave. Powell explains that Estonia was actually built under a divine beast's protection, with beastmen living right alongside everyone. But 500 years ago, the royals suddenly turned on them and started hating. He also mentioned that every book about the divine beast was banned, and the royals are totally hiding their past, especially that one secret Willibald asked about. Pal dropped a massive truth bomb, saying the real king is whoever can change their appearance, and the whole room was left in total shock. The guy kept going, saying this secret was buried in the past and only his family knows about it since they were there when the heir was born, so even other royals have no idea. He told his owls that as soon as the king saw Diana, he ordered her to hide those ears and locked her away from the world, keeping her a total secret even from her own family. But Powell says Count Tobias somehow managed to sniff out the truth. Uncle finally realized why Prince Tobias was so obsessed with getting rid of the princess. He knew she was the real heir to the throne of Estonia. Pal agreed, reminding him that the royals are literally raised to hate beastmen, and he's still super salty about losing his spot as heir, so of course he's furious and won't leave Diana alone. The princess is totally hyped and wants to know why she's the chosen one. So the bald guy admits he's been wondering the same thing and dug through some forbidden books to find out that this whole tradition started at the beginning of the kingdom and is actually linked to a crazy prophecy about a divine beast. The princess hears a prophecy that a guy with beast powers is both a curse and a blessing. And since he's the only one who can stop the disaster, Diana's left wondering. Paul told her that even though this person is a sign of a total disaster, they're the only one who can actually stop it, and the royal family has to be ready to step up when things get crazy. Willie asked if this was finally the big disaster, but the guy told him nobody knows for sure and that literally anything could happen next. The princess talked about a power that could stop the disaster, but she looked totally heartbroken when she admitted she never actually had it. She kept going, saying she didn't have any crazy magic powers and asked what she was even supposed to do. Pal apologized for keeping her in the dark, saying she was just too young to handle the truth, but Dia thanked him for finally being real with her. The princess was totally clueless after the guy apologized back, so she just started saying sorry to everyone. The count asked why they were aiming so high and told the girl it's totally fine to be confused since anyone in her shoes would feel the exact same way. Willie kept on ranting, muttering that every god is the same and they never stop talking in riddles. Zeke was super curious and asked his uncle what he just said, but the guy just brushed him off and said it was nothing. Uncle figured they should wrap things up and give Princess Diana some space to cool off. Pal has his back and offers to let everyone go if the count just talks to him one-on-one, while the princess and Zeke are seriously freaking out about what's going down. He's really worried about Diana because she looks so stressed, and he totally gets it since that treasure has him feeling just as restless, making him wonder if there's anything he can do to... Now it's nighttime, and the scene shifts over to the Magesta School of Magic. This young mage tries to cast a spell, but totally flops, tossing away another failed copy right before a classmate shows up to say the Empire needs his mana to jumpstart something big. The student explains that this mysterious girl is a total genius the Empire never saw coming, so they really need to stay on her good side. He adds that the Empire needs a straight answer right now on whether he's down for their experiment. He didn't get an answer, so he just jumped to his next experiment without waiting, admitting he had no clue what was actually happening in his own head. He said he was heading back to study and told the guy to hurry up and get to the Kingdom of Estonia already. As soon as the other guy walked away, the student went back to his experiment and whispered that he only wanted one thing. Inside the Abel family annex, Princess Diana is scouring the library for any books on Estonia's history, but she's coming up totally empty-handed. She's sitting there realizing she can't just do nothing, especially since that scary prophecy is totally stuck in her head. She's terrified her birth was actually a curse and keeps wondering why she was even born in the first place. She's totally freaking out that this whole disaster is her fault and she'll be completely helpless to stop. The princess is still stuck in the Abel library, racking her brain over her hidden powers and feeling totally clueless about what she's supposed to do next. Emma peeks out from behind the library door just as Zeke walks up to ask her how Dia is doing. She told the guy that the princess had been totally depressed ever since she heard that prophecy, and no matter how hard she tried to cheer Abdaya up, nothing was working. Zeke kept talking to the princess after that, but she sounded totally drained and he could tell she was feeling really down. Seeing that even the maid can't get Dia to open up makes him feel awful, so he starts wondering how he can actually help his friend. Emma tells the guy she's desperate to help Mrs. Diana but has no clue what to do, and Zeke is actually shocked she cares so much, which she totally admits to. She tells the boy how the mistress hired her, but since she was a total klutz who messed everything up, Diana always cheered her on and talked to her every day, which was honestly the highlight of her whole life. She keeps going, saying nobody ever treated her as well as Diana, who was way more than just a boss to her. Emma starts sobbing, calling herself a useless maid because she can't help her mistress. But Zeke tells her to stay strong so they can figure out a plan together. The maid claims she's only good for cooking, but the boy tells her she's the best because her food literally wiped away all his exhaustion back in the dungeon. The boy says this is the moment, but Emma is totally lost, so Zeke asks her to cook up something delicious since she's the only one who can pull it off. Later that night, the maid leads Princess Diana out to the courtyard, and even though Diana has no clue why they're out so late, Emma just tells her she'll see for herself as they... Diana spots a table set with snacks from Emma and Zika, and Zika tells her he's been waiting for his princess to arrive. Diana asks Zeke what's the deal, and he just says he wanted to grab some tea, adding that Emma actually made all these snacks herself. The maid told Mrs. Diana she really wanted to make her happy, so she cooked up every single one of her favorite meals to be the tastiest food on the planet. Emma said she hoped the snacks would cheer her up, and Diana looked totally shook. Zeke jumped in, explaining he'd been looking for a chance to talk, so he set up this tea party since he remembered how sweets cheered her up in the dungeon, and Diana shyly agreed to take a seat. The princess catches a whiff of the amazing food, and when the guy asks if she's finally feeling better, she says yes and tells Emma how the palace maids used to make her day with sweets. The princess keeps going, saying she still gets that super warm, fuzzy feeling from the past. Pal spots the trio still hanging out at the table, and Zeke tells the princess he totally gets how crazy and confusing things are for her right now. Diana admits she's totally ashamed because she knows she's supposed to be the strong one. But she's losing hope for the future and feels a massive weight on her shoulders after Powell accidentally overheard her. The princess keeps talking, admitting she feels totally useless and has no clue what to do because she's honestly terrified. Zeke starts to calm her down, telling her he and Diana are actually super similar, and then asks if she remembers what he said about the able treasure. He says that when he first learned the treasure's secret, it was way too much for him to handle, and he never expected anyone to mess with his fate while he was still totally lost and confused. Zeke tells her he totally gets how she feels, and while the princess is just standing there confused, he says he's taking this whole burden on himself because he's got to protect. He's got so many people he cares about that he's finally owning his destiny and swearing to get way stronger than ever before. So Zeke's gonna flip this disaster into a win since his family and crew have his back, but when he tells Diana the princess is behind it, she totally doesn't buy it. He tells her that her kindness is what keeps her getting back up, and since she cares so much about her friends and has a strong heart, she might not realize how powerful she is yet, but if she masters it, she'll save the world and make the future awesome. Zeke keeps telling her she's never alone, promising that even if she's scared, he'll be right there by her side along with a whole squad ready to protect her. The boy tells her she can always count on these guys for help, and Emma promises to always have her back, making the Count smile as he secretly listens in. Diana's still pretty confused, but she knows she's got to be ready for when disaster strikes. She thought she'd be facing it all alone, but then she realizes she's actually got him, Emma, and Pal right there with her. Zeke jumps in and reminds her that just like back in the dungeon, they're gonna make it through this together. The princess says she just needs to step up her game, and feeling totally fired up, she turns to Emma and tells her she needs her help. Diana looks up at Zeke and asks for a quick minute. Then she finally heads back and says sorry for keeping him hanging. He turned around and was totally stunned to see her in that dress. And even though Mrs. Diana said she'd never shown it to anyone before, he told her she looked amazing. She taps into her magic to bring back her animal ears and tail, showing up right in front of Zeke in her full beastman form. Zeke was totally stunned, but Diana confessed she hated her look because she knew her ears and tail would be exposed eventually, and she was so scared that she couldn't stop checking the mirror. She said meeting him finally made her love her look, and now she's ready to show the world her true self without ever backing down, even if nobody supports her. The princess announced she's heading straight to the Kingdom of Estonia to finally meet her brother face to face. She said she's gonna trust her own power, and Zeke told her he's got total faith in her too. He smiles and tells her she looks great. Then Powell and Emma walk out of the mansion as Powell says he's helping too because he can't just stand there while she's getting to work. Balshmidi was just stoked to see the princess smiling again, and he and the maid both knew it was pure luck that she ran into Siegbert back in that dungeon. Emma suddenly remembered the sweets she forgot to give Pal and handed them over, catching him totally off guard as she explained they were just tea party leftovers that would go bad if he didn't eat them and take a well-deserved break. The guy was shocked he actually gave up, blaming it on his old age. But he said if Mrs. Diana is staying strong, then they have to be even tougher, and he swore he'd protect her no matter what. The Abel family started getting everything ready before they headed out to the Kingdom of Estonia. Back in the capital, Zeke and Uncle Willie are checking out the finished teleportation stone set for Estonia, and even though Uncle promises they won't crash into a dungeon this time, Zeke is still pretty nervous. Gilbert stood right by Prince Julius and told him the new teleportation stone was ready for action, so the prince thanked him and put him in charge of all the final prep. Gilbert said he totally got it and hoped all this prep wasn't for nothing, while the prince just twirled his brush and agreed he felt the same way. Diana's scratching her head over how they'll actually get there today, when a boy suddenly runs up and asks her to go watch the big launch of a new teleportation stone. The princess agreed to go, and when Zeke asked if she was ready for their trip to Estonia, she promised she wouldn't lose heart ever again. The kid reached out his hand, Diana grabbed it, and they headed straight for the teleportation stone, totally hyped to finally see a brand new kingdom. The heroes used their teleport stone to warp toward the Kingdom of Estonia, landing in a forest clearing just outside the city. They reached the edge of the magic barrier, and Zeke was totally blown away by how massive and wide it actually was. Prince Julius confirmed they'd warped across several countries from the capital, calling the sacred tree's power insane. But Willie asked if he wasn't even more blown away by the Count's own magic. Zeke's worried about warping into another country, but the prince tells him it's all good since they got permission for the tournament, and the stone only works on specific markers anyway. Julius bragged that their reputation lets them get away with anything, and that's when the kid realized just how terrifying this prince really is. Pal stood across from Julius and said his son would be there soon, so they just had to wait, while Zeke checked on the stranger who got sick from the teleport, guessing the guy was a magic squad member because of his clothes. Marcus whipped around and yelled that it was definitely not okay, calling Zeke a totally capable kid. The kid asks why the stranger is wearing a magic squad's uniform, but the guy fires back, asking why a knight from this kingdom is working as a mage for another country. He was feeling totally gross again, so Zeke told him to stop shouting before he puked. But then the Count snuck up behind the Estonian kid and said he needed a little motivation. He started defending himself to his uncle, bragging that the teleportation was basically perfect except for one tiny glitch, and when he offered to write a report for Willie to check, Zeke was blown away by how much this kid actually wanted to work. The Count brushed it off and dumped even more work on him, but then Diana spotted the guy and came sprinting over. She was so relieved he was safe and finally back, while Marcus immediately started apologizing for everything that went down in the dungeon. Mr. Pal walked up super hyped to see him back, while Willie apologized to Diana for totally wrecking her night, explaining he had to get on Prince Julius's good side, and Zeke finally thanked. Marcus thanked everyone but said he didn't deserve the hype. Then Pal's son finally showed up and apologized for making them wait. He introduces himself as the landowner, Edmund von Bolschmiedi, saying Queen Juliana sent him to take them, and while Powell is hyped to see his son, Ed just tells him he's glad to see he's still doing okay. Edmund told his dad he was totally freaked out when he heard he'd joined the rebels, but he's so relieved it's not true, and his dad thanked him for actually believing in him. Prince Julius rushed over, totally shocked to see Edmund there, and thanked him for coming to meet them. Ed bows low to the prince, saying it's a huge honor to meet him, and the prince tells him the feeling is mutual and that he's got some serious class. Julius stared at the massive shield and told Edmund it's totally insane that it covers the whole country, especially since only the Kingdom of Lynn and Estonia have anything like it. He asks if this is the royal family's true power, and when Balshmidi Jr. agrees that's what people say, the prince asks him one more time just to be sure. Edmund explains that the royals control the barrier, but since it's way too hard for humans to keep it up alone, rumors say it's actually powered by a legendary divine beast. Prince Julius asked if that ancient divine beast was still lurking around, but Ed just told him the whole thing was nothing but a basic rumor. Balshmide Sr. suggested they keep talking while they walk and asked if they wanted to check out the inside of the barrier, and they were totally down, telling him they were counting on him. Nikolai looks way too serious, So Theo worriedly asks what's up, and he tells her he's never smelled that scent on him before, leaving her totally confused. Over at the Bolsh Media State, Julius tells the Majesta crew their rooms are ready, and the servants will show them the way. Right as a little kid runs out totally hyped that his dad is finally home. The prince looked down with a grin and told Johann that some VIP guests were visiting, so he had to be on his best behavior and stay quiet, making the little kid feel totally shy as he apologized. Zeke stares at Johann, totally hyped because he's finally found someone even smaller than he is. The little boy is so hyped to see Princess Diana that he sprints over for a hug, but then he totally catches her off guard by asking why she's leaving the castle and if she's just there to play. Diana tells him it's been way too long since they last met, and she's traveled a massive distance, asking if they can crash for a bit, but Johann goes even further and tells her she can stay forever. Zigbert asked the princess about the kid, and she told him the boy is always hanging around the castle with his buddy. Johann spotted Zeke and gave him a death stare, demanding to know who he was and telling him to back off while he moved in closer to protect the princess. Zigbert crossed his arms with a scowl and announced he was actually Diaz's fiancé, but as they started bickering, he even claimed to be her husband, only for the kid to yell that he was a total liar. Diana screamed at Johann to stop being such a jerk while everyone watched them fight. But since Marcus was the only one who didn't know they were actually engaged, the princess just stood there muttering. Once he finally chilled out, the kid noticed Haku and started geeking out over how pretty the cat was, asking Diana if she'd actually petted it yet. The princess told Johann to back off, but Haku was actually loving the squeeze and felt like he was getting the best massage ever. Zeke is fuming as he watches his cat get cuddled, feeling totally betrayed by Dia and Haku. But he tries to stay patient because he thinks it's immature to get... Back at the mansion, Nikolai asks Zeke if that other shorty messed him up, but Zeke says he's fine, and when Emmy pipes up saying everyone knows he's Diana's real partner, Marcus yanks Johann off the floor and tells him to quit clinging to the princess, but Johann snaps that he's an aristocrat who needs to be let go, only for Marcus to remind him that his fancy title isn't an excuse to be a brat. The kid keeps being super rude to the knight, telling Marcus to shut up since he's the one always hanging around the princess anyway. Still holding Johann off the floor, the knight told the maid to grab a picture book to calm the kid down, but before she could even finish saying she'd find it, Johann cut her off and looked right at Diana. He asks if she knows the maiden's promise to the White Wolf, and the princess says she knows the famous Estonian fairy tale even though she's never actually read it. The guy was totally stoked and told Diana he loved this story, so he offered to read it out loud, making the princess blush as she asked why he was even doing that. Marcus recaps the legend, but Johann gets totally annoyed when he mentions how much the knight knows. Marcus says he read it as a kid too, explaining that after a massive war, the country of Estonia was born, and a divine beast sealed its power inside a girl before heading back to the world of the gods. Diana was totally stuck thinking about the divine beast's crazy power, while Marcus explained that the girl is called the Child of Light because of her golden hair and her super kind but tough spirit. Johann finally cooled off and asked the princess if she wanted to read, flexing his big brain by offering to read it for her, but Zeke cut her off because he also wanted to hear the story about the Child of Light saving the day. The princess finally gives in, and Johann is so hyped that he makes Marcus carry him to the bookshelf, which totally triggers Marcus into threatening to drop him. But even though he's calling the... Later that night, Zeke was chilling in his room with Haku, talking about how wild his day was and how he'd never had that much fun playing with a big group before. Haku just nodded and kicked back to relax, while Zeke promised they were finally going to get some solid sleep tonight. Before hitting the hay, he couldn't stop thinking about the story of the girl and the White Wolf, realizing it was exactly what Camille had told him. He's totally hooked on that jewel and its divine energy, thinking it might be the secret to Dia's power, but he's cut off when someone walks in and tells his uncle that Zeke had a blast today. The kids plopped down on the bed as Willie apologized for waking them up, saying he was finally done talking to Edmund and wanted to hang out with them instead, and when Zeke asked what, his uncle then brings up the legendary divine beast, and the kid gets super hyped asking if it's actually out there somewhere, but Willie tells him it's definitely possible even though nobody's ever actually seen it. The uncle said this beast's tracks were popping up all over the country, and Edmund warned everyone they better watch their backs. Zeke asked again, wondering how anyone could actually turn against a divine beast, but his uncle warned him to get ready because if the royal family was their enemy, they were way out of their league. Willie thinks the Magic Academy might be involved, but they still have no clue who the real enemy is. Uncle basically said if humans aren't enough, they'll call in non-human allies, and just as Zeke asked about it, A voice behind him scared the life out of him. Suddenly, the wind spirit popped into the room and the boy realized it was Frau, who told him she'll always be right there wherever Willibald goes. Uncle explained that spirits are all linked, so before he even left for the Kingdom of Estonia, he made sure to get a spirit's blessing on the ribbon he brought with him. He warned that spirits totally hate humans and are impossible to talk to, so he gave the boy a ribbon to keep him safe from spirit magic just in case that divine beast was actually a spirit. Willibald also mentioned that this ribbon actually blocks magic that tries to mess with your heart. Zeke was totally freaked out and asked if people really used magic like that in this country, but his uncle told him normal mages can't do it, though one specific person always shows up in the legends of Estonia's royal family. So he made this tape as a backup to prove his theory. But since the spirit magic had to stay a secret, he had Zeke use a concealment spell to hide. Uncle said Zeke's hiding powers were totally foolproof, so Frau snatched the kid up and offered a reward to keep her hidden, but the boy just wanted her to let him go. Willie watched Frau goofing off with the kid and wondered if he was being too paranoid after using the spirit's blessing, but he still figured it was better to stay ready for the absolute worst. The next morning, the guests head out from the von Balschmott estate while the hosts wave them off. Johann asks Diana if she's really leaving already, and she promises they'll definitely meet again. Prince Julius thanks Edmund for all the help, but Edmund just says he was only doing what he had to do. Edmund wishes everyone a safe trip and says he's glad he got to chat with Prince Julius, who's just as happy about it, while Uncle checks to make sure everyone has their lucky charms on. Then he finally gives the signal to charge ahead. Over at the Estonia Palace, Princess Diana and her crew walk in, but a mysterious stranger suddenly stands up from the throne to meet them. Everyone arriving was totally shocked to see this girl standing right next to Prince Tobias. She tells them she's been super hyped for them to finally show up. This girl greets them and introduces herself as Juliana von Estonia, the second princess, explaining that since the king is busy, she'll be the one hanging out with them for now. The crown prince says it's his first time meeting her and tries to introduce himself, but he gets totally cut off when Tobias spots Diana and starts shouting. Prince Tobias is absolutely losing it, screaming at Diana for starting a rebellion and then having the nerve to show up. And even though his servant tries to calm him down, the prince isn't listening to anyone. Zeke realizes the man is actually Prince Tobias and gets totally heated, but Princess Diana jumps right in front of him to stop him from doing something crazy. She tells her brother straight up that she'd never point a weapon at her family or her people because they mean everything to her, and she's sure everyone will understand that. Her brother doesn't believe her and starts getting heated again, but Juliana jumps right into the middle of the fight and shuts him down, saying she's totally fed up with all the family drama. The second princess tells Tobias he needs to chill out, but he just scoffs and walks past Diana, whispering that they aren't finished yet. Toby storms out of the palace shouting that he's definitely going to be the king, while Juliana apologizes to the crowd, saying he's been a total hothead for 10 years and that siblings really need to stick together. Uncle Willie asked if Prince Tobias was the one who accused Diana of rebellion, but Juliana said no and told him she couldn't spill the whole story yet. She also mentioned that beastmen were behind the revolt, and they were all talking about Diana, and even though the second princess said those freaks were lying, her brother completely lost his cool. Uncle asked if someone was pulling the rebels' strings, and she agreed. But after seeing what was in the dungeon, she knew the accusations were totally fake. Juliana looked at Diana and told her she was so sorry she had to deal with all this, and her sister thanked her for the support. Zeke let out a huge sigh of relief because he was terrified Diana was about to be eaten. But Juliana actually seemed pretty chill as she started asking everyone about the Abel family joining the tournament. She said if the Abel family wins the whole tournament, they can finally clear Diana's name and make her engagement official, since Juliana knows everyone will believe whoever takes the crown. Majesta's prince totally agreed with the plan, but then the person who'd been waiting with Juliana interrupted to ask if they were finally finished. After his question, Elias stepped in and asked if he could finally get a word in. He told them to handle Dia and their family drama themselves, and when Juliana said that wasn't very royal of him, Elias just shrugged it off because he couldn't care less about politics. He dipped out of the throne room because he didn't care who the king was, saying he just had to call the boss and tell them to wait, while Juliana realized they were beat and hooked them. The second the guests cleared out and the doors shut, Prince Julius totally lost it and started laughing his head off, making Willie finally realize why the guy had been so quiet the whole time. Julius told his uncle that obvious villains are totally boring, but now things are finally getting hype, so his uncle warned him to keep his cool. Marcus totally snapped and told him to stop laughing at the royals, but Nikolai called him out for being so mean to his little sister while Emmy was still shaking in her boots. Edmund told everyone in the common room that Diana's speech actually went way better than they expected, and he was super impressed by how mature and tough she was. Zeke flashed a big smile and hyped up the princess, telling her she was actually a total genius. Diana just told him it was all because that boy was standing right there next to her. Julius asks Willie what his special eyes see in those three, but Willie admits he didn't even use them, which totally shocks the prince since his uncle usually activates them the second he suspects someone. Uncle figured that, hey, maybe it was actually worth checking them out. He warned that the country is guarded by a sacred beast and a magic barrier, so if he uses his eyes, he'll get caught instantly and the whole company will be in huge trouble. Willie says he's still figuring out how that barrier works, so he's not going to start blaming the royals just yet. Julius realized that being reckless with magic was a dead giveaway, so he promised to watch his step, which immediately caught Zeke's attention as he listened in. His secret invisible assistant asked if it was for real, and Zeke thought back that the sacred beast barrier could definitely do something like that. His assistant told him to stop with the judgy stare, and Zeke just grabbed his head, super glad he'd actually forgotten to use it. A young guy walks into the lounge, cutting them off to ask for a moment, and just as Julius recognizes him and tries to say his name, the kid beats him to the punch, and the boy finally introduced himself as Prince Matthias von Estonia and apologized for his brother being a total jerk, but the Prince of Majestas just laughed it off like it was actually pretty funny. Matthias stopped right in front of Julius and the guests, and when Julius pointed out that the prince being there made things way more complicated, Matthias totally agreed. The Prince of Estonia apologized and told everyone to clear out except for Julius, Sieg, Albert, and Princess Diana, and the rest of the crowd actually listened. Sieg asked why only he and brother Al were hanging with the princes, and Matthias explained it's because Albert is fighting in the tournament and Sieg is Dai's fiancé, so they had to know what was up. Willie got the info he was looking for and decided to wait for the rest of the crew at the hotel, leaving Julius behind with Zeke and Albert. Once everyone else finally cleared out, Prince Majesty turned to Matthias and asked what they were even there to talk about. The Prince of Asteria dropped a total bombshell, telling everyone in the room that a massive civil war was about to tear the country apart. He told them to drop out of the tournament, grab Dee, and head straight back to Majesta, but Julius had to ask if he was actually for real. Matthias drops the news that their dad is dying, which totally freaks Dee out, and warns that the fight for the throne is about to get way more intense since Tobias is ready to go to war against his own sibling. The prince says he's gathering an army to take down his brother, but he doesn't want Dai caught in the crossfire, so he begs them to keep her safe. He begs to take his sister and escape back to Majesta, making Zeke realize that this civil war might actually be the massive disaster everyone was warned about. Zeke and the gang are suddenly stopped by Princess Diana, who refuses to run away because she won't let her people get caught in a civil war. But Julius shuts her down by saying she's way too weak to actually fight. Dee refuses to back down, shouting that she returned to find her true power and fulfill her destiny. So she's done running and has finally made her choice. Matthias thought about her purpose and told her guards they could head home since this was Estania's mess, not Majestas's. But Albert cut her off and insisted it was there. He explained that the family can't just sit around when they are in danger, and while Diana felt super awkward asking where she fit in, Julius admitted that even though he wanted to bail, his heart just couldn't take it once Matthias showed up with that news. Julius drops the news that the Majesta Magic Academy is behind it all, leaving Matthias totally confused. The prince explained they came to Estonia to clear Diana's name and handle the academy, and if Al wins the tournament, he gets to enter the school as a total VIP. Julius warned that if word got out about the academy, Majesta would take the fall, and since he wasn't looking to start a massive war, Matthias was totally shocked that this was the only reason they were teaming up. The prince told him there was no way he could promise that, saying they were just there to check on the academy. But if they happened to stop a massive civil war along the way, Julius was going to act like it was just a total accident. Matthias thanked him and said he'd respect Dee's wild choice no matter how reckless it was, then told Zeke he totally trusted him while Diana thanked her brother for having their back. The prince finally turned to Albert and warned him that Tobias is definitely planning something for the tournament, so he better watch his back.